Welcome everyone to episode 111 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Owen. No Doug for us this week, but we're going to talk about two new movies, A Working Man and The Woman in the Yard. But first, as always, we could talk about what we watched this past week. Owen, you can take it away.
I didn't watch anything.
Like,
I
like not a
didn't watch a
single.
movie.
Really?
I there was some like stuff I watched in class, like some short films and stuff, but I did not watch a feature length film this week other than the two
That we're
movies
talking
that played
about.
in the theater. Yeah.
There's technically
Kind of,
more than two movies that played in theaters because Death of a Unicorn also came out, but we're not talking about
yeah,
that.
I wanted to see that, but I didn't need to see it, and I just have been super busy this week with
Sure.
a bunch of stuff. Um, so
Yeah,
I didn't watch any movie.
I'll probably go see Death of a Unicorn maybe sometime this week. I don't know. Not important. Anyway, okay, I guess I'll just chat then. I watched a lot because to give some people insight, my my computer, which is an old piece of shit computer, finally just gave up on me and won't turn on anymore. And so I am getting a new computer, but because I don't have that yet, not much to do in my house right now. And so my only option is to watch stuff on TV. Thankfully, March Madness has been going on the past couple of days. So that has been something that I could always have on. But it also led me to watch a lot of stuff, a lot of TV that I don't need to talk about on here. I started Broadchurch yesterday, the first episode of Broadchurch. Cool show so far. I started another season of Survivor after finishing my first season. Um, yeah, and then I'm just keeping. I'm in the pit, obviously, the greatest show to ever come out. Uh, but yeah, I'm recording this on my laptop because I have no computer. So if anything gets a little bit funky for the audience, that's why. It's because I don't have a computer. The movies that I watched Marie Antoinette for the first time, the Sofia Coppola movie. Very cool, very pretty movie. I think it is a fun idea that people do not utilize enough to make period pieces that feel modern. I guess sometimes you could go too far in the other direction because what was that? You definitely didn't watch this movie, but there was like a period piece, like a Netflix original with like, was it Dakota Johnson or something? Like,
I don't know.
oh gosh, I don't, you people listening know what I'm talking about. That was
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure
it was just like
everyone
a
is big
disaster
fans of this.
of a movie. No, it was like very popular on Netflix. Persuasion. Persuasion is the name of the movie.
By
Uh,
Carrie
uh,
Cracknell?
what?
Carrie Cracknell.
Yes, the director Carrie Cracknell, but it's another like classic literature adaptation. It's like the Jane Austen novel Persuasion. And so
Mm.
uh, so like that movie was kind of like using the stupid modern movie humor and like talking to the audience in a really annoying way. I think the way that Sofia Coppola does it with Marie Antoinette is a lot smarter. It's like both simultaneously a period piece, but if you're in the know, then you kind of just like get what's going on where it's like the stuff happening in the movie just makes it feel modern. Like there's no like like there's nothing like trying to create humor for a modern audience or anything, but it's just like the way that the characters act, it just feels like you're watching a movie that takes place in 2006 when it came out, even though it takes place in the 1700s, which I think is fun. It's like, it's in ways for me, it was kind of similar to Barry Lyndon. Like because that movie also feels modern and some of the stuff might not even be intentional. I think part of the appeal of some of these period pieces is that like people from that era, like rich aristocrats from like hundreds of years ago, they just kind of act like reality TV stars. Like that's their personality. Is just that they were like rich as shit and like and they're just funny. Like they're just like such interesting characters, and so it makes it fun to watch
Yeah.
movies about them in the modern day. So I just really enjoy those. And then I watched Voltaire, which is a Pedro Almodovar movie. It's only the second movie of his that I've seen, but I'm interested in watching more of his movies. Penelope Cruz won an Oscar for this movie. She's very good in it. I watched She's the Man, which I'm sure I had sort of seen as a kid growing up, like bits and pieces of it, but I've never really watched it in full. And it's funny, dude. It's like surprisingly because of the nature of the story, like when I was
Yeah.
like reading about She's the Man and it's like a woman disguising herself as a man to be on the
Yeah.
men's soccer team, I'm like,
Mhm.
this seems like it could have aged really badly. And
Sure.
then it kind of didn't. I'm like, it's actually really funny by modern standards. It's like it's really yeah, it's really silly. Like Channing Tatum is very funny in it, but Amanda Bynes obviously like a lot of s- a lot has happened since Amanda Bynes was a child actor, and a lot of it's very sad. But like when you watch whether it's like that movie or the Amanda Show, which I watched a ton as a kid or whatever, it's like man, she was one of the great, like, comedic like, she was so talented for, like, a child star or just for any star. It's, like, kind of unbelievable, um, how funny she was. I think it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I finished watching, which I think I mentioned on the last episode, Adolescence, another show, but it's on my letterbox, so that's why I thought of it. Yeah, it's only 4 episodes long. It's pretty good. It made me cry quite a bit. I thought it was going to be kind of simple and not get across a lot of ideas, but I was surprised at how much nuance it actually has. There's definitely still a lot more to that conversation that's not in the show and that you probably just can't put into a 4 episode show. But there are like a lot of ideas where I was like, oh, I'm surprised that it went here actually. Like I thought it was really just going to be like Andrew Tate bad, which is kind of what I talked about in the past, but it's a little bit more than that. Like there's a lot of stuff there, and I think specifically the way that like in the final episode the family is affected by what happened is like really fascinating stuff. It's like a theme that I think about a lot with like a lot of my favorite uh movies and shows. Like even when I just started watching Broadchurch the other day, Broadchurch is like it's about a really tragic thing that happens in like a small community, and the like drama that happens in this like small community, like where everybody kind of has like everybody gossips, everybody like knows things about each other, like that. Those kinds of movies and shows are like my favorite thing in the world. I love stuff about that. So yeah, it's just like interesting when like this kind of awful thing happens. It's like super public and like how a community responds to that, and like how that affects people on a personal level, which you don't typically really think about. But yeah, obviously that matters. I watched Pan's Labyrinth for the first time. Guillermo del Toro's most
Good.
popular movie. Uh, yeah, I'd never seen it. It's awesome. I cried a lot at that too. Like at the end, I was like ugly crying. I was like, man, this is like way more emotional than I guess I kind of knew that just because of how people talk about the movie. But
Sure.
but yeah, it's like it's a beautiful movie. It's like it's really, really good. I don't know. I think I kind of expected it to be a bit of a different movie.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
realize like how much I thought it would be like it is still like big fantasy stuff, but I thought it was kind of just like movie starts and then this little girl like goes into the fantasy world and spends the whole movie there, but it's like actually a lot more about this like fascist regime and
mhm,
and all of like the military stuff and like
yeah.
this like insanely good villain character who is just like one of the most like despicable people in any movie ever. I was like, yeah, I was really surprised that so much of the movie was also about that because when I went into the
Mhm.
movie, like knowing the only things that you know about Pan's Labyrinth and like having seen, that the Pale Man character or whatever, like I thought that character would just be like in a big chunk of the movie, and it's really
Yeah.
just like one scene. I mean, that scene rocks, but I guess I just had different expectations for what it would be, and it's not like a letdown. I think it's actually cool that it does all that other stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. But it was cool. Uh, I watched a 4 hour Spike Lee documentary called When the
Yeah,
Levees
I
Broke.
saw you this.
Um, that is really good stuff. It was like, so it played at, I think it was Cannes or like some other major festival, but other than that, it was just released directly on to HBO. Like it just had a TV premiere on HBO. It was never released theatrically, which is the case for a lot of documentaries, obviously. Um, but man, it's like, and it happens. So for those listening, if you don't know, it's a documentary about Hurricane Katrina, but it happens and was recorded like pretty soon after Hurricane Katrina. I mean, Hurricane Katrina was in 2005. The movie came out in 2006. So it's like interviewing people not long separated from the events. And you know, like the recovery efforts for Katrina have gone on like to this day. You know, it's like something that's affected New Orleans for since it happened. Like it's they're always it's had such lasting impacts and effects. So like to be seeing a documentary where you're kind of seeing the response to Katrina and also like how people feel about it so soon after it happened
Mhm.
is one thing. But then you know, Spike Lee like also knows how to make a documentary. Obviously, it's so like the interviews are so good. It's. I was talking to my girlfriend about it. I was like, I'm shocked because she watched a little bit of it with me, not the whole thing, but like I was shocked at how quick it moved and how like interesting and entertaining is the wrong word because it's all really sad. But in terms of like, you know, like a lot of people watch documentaries and get bored fast watching documentaries.
Yeah.
It's so watchable for like a 4 hour documentary. You know, and it's split into four parts. So you could even take breaks in between if you have to. But like, I mean, I did, I watched it in two parts, but like, yeah, it's so watchable and it's yeah, it's really heartbreaking stuff because it's just like a awesome depiction of how much our government sucks. It's like a huge condemnation of George Bush, and a big focus of the documentary is like his you know, listeners of the pod know how we feel about this, I'm sure, but like it's a huge condemnation of like his you know, actions in Iraq and how focused his presidency was on Iraq while something like this was happening in our own country. You know, I mean, the
Yeah.
response, like the difference in response between how much they cared about being in Iraq and how little they cared about the people affected in Katrina is crazy. I mean, there's so many like little details that are so hard to watch in that documentary. There's like, you know, people are displaced from their homes for so long. There's like moments where they're talking about people as refugees, which was just like crazy because they just like live here, like they're from, you know what I mean, like they're born and raised in New Orleans, and they're talking about them like they're not American citizens, like they just like don't really care about that. I mean, it is, yeah, it's crazy. And then there's also like the whole aspect of how underprepared the government was for an event like that, where it's like
Yeah.
they said that they could handle a storm like it, and then very quickly they did not, obviously. Yeah, I would really recommend that people check it out. I know it's like kind of such a significant event that you think you know a lot about it, obviously, regardless of like what age you are, but there's still so much stuff in there that is like really worth seeing. And then I watched the two movies that we're going to talk about, so we can we can do that. I guess we'll start with a working man, which we decided on starting with. It's the new David Ayer movie with Jason Statham in the lead. Famously been talked about as a sort of like spiritual sequel to The Beekeeper,
Yeah.
just because of like the
Yeah, it's another
director
team up
actor
with them.
combo and like it's another like, you know, it was at least marketed in a lot of the same way, and so it'll like look a lot like The Beekeeper. And so a lot of like my thoughts about this movie have to do with it in relation to The Beekeeper
Sure.
because it's just not The Beekeeper.
Yeah.
Like kind of disappointingly so. I know we're very early into the year and it's not like the new David Ayer action movie was like super high on the list, but like after
Sure.
really enjoying The Beekeeper, this it does kind of make this like I think at least the biggest disappointment of the year so far to start the year, because at the very least we wanted it to just be another
Sure.
beekeeper, and
Yeah,
it's not that at all, really.
I think immediately it was like, oh, ooh. Like there's like a
Yeah,
kind of an immediate drop in quality. Um, Different cinematographer working on the film. I don't know the budget difference, but it does feel just like a cheaper movie. And I think um it's like it has I think Statham continues to just be good in the movie. And
yeah,
I think like he's kind of and I forget who said this and I'm bad at remembering, but someone said something about like how like the beekeeper kind of was like, it was a movie that was great because of Jason Statham, and then this is like a bad movie that's like okay, or like
yeah, because
it's
Jason
being pulled up.
Statham.
Both movies are being pulled up and elevated by Jason Statham, but the Working Man is just a worse movie by far.
Yeah, well, I think part of what the difference is that the beekeeper exists in like a totally different world in like
Mhm.
tone and like just the even the creation of the world. Like it is so much more fun. It's like
Yeah.
it takes itself way less seriously. It has like these like big loud characters who are
Mhm.
fun to watch for like the scenes that they pop in and out of. And then of course
Yeah.
like the ending is so insane in the beekeeper that like it sticks with you. The ending here is like, probably the best part of the movie in terms of like action at least, but it's also, it's not like the kind of ending where like I went home and have been thinking about how crazy that was since it happened. And so it doesn't really
Yeah.
have any of like the things that other than Jason Statham, it doesn't have any of the things that make the beekeeper work so well. It's like a lot of the
Mhm.
story's pretty boring. The
Yeah,
world
I
that
yeah,
they
it's
create
just
is pretty
very
boring.
generic. It's like it's so the whole thing is
Yeah.
kind of generic, like, and I don't think they lean into, like, the working man aspect of it enough. Like, I think the fun
No.
of the beekeeper is like, "Oh, he's a beekeeper, like, what the heck? Like,
Yeah.
the beekeeper's gonna get him." And, like, I think they, like, abandon the working man stuff, like, pretty quickly where he just becomes, like, generic, like, ex-military
Yeah, he's like,
guy.
yeah, it's like he's an expert at this stuff, and which is like true about the beekeeper, but also like there's like a sentiment that's like there with the beekeeper where it's like you kind of don't want this guy's like lovely cozy little life to be disrupted, and
Yeah.
like in a working man it's never really, it doesn't feel like it's established the same way. It's more just like, I don't know, he like this is just what he's made to do, is just like do the action part. I never really like totally bought um the relationship with the daughter. Like it didn't really matter to me as much, and I think part of that is also the character of like, I guess it's his dead wife's father, so like
Oh,
his
yes,
father,
yes.
his father-in-law. um
Mhm.
at least I think that's how they described it in the movie. I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah.
his father-in-law, but like that character like served no purpose to me. I mean, it was
The
very
scene
dumb.
where he pulls up and they're having, like, the, Alice in Wonderland, like, party is, like, the
Yeah.
craziest thing
I was
ever.
like, "What is that?"
I
And
kinda
so
I wish they went more into, like, that stuff, like, that was just, like, so ridiculous that I was like, "That's fun." Just 'cause, like, it kind of is, like, such a random, like, pull a idea out of the hat idea where he pulled up
yeah.
to there and they were, like, all, like it was like Alice in Wonderland. Um,
Yeah,
but it doesn't really do any of that, like, everything is
it's
kinda, like,
just
just
like a lot of it.
plain.
Yeah, a lot of it exists to move the plot forward. There's also like a scene towards the end that's like or a number of scenes towards the end that are pretty similar, where like things sort of just like happen. I don't want Okay, we're gonna spoil some of the movie. I don't think it's a big deal if we spoil this movie, but like the way that um the main conflict in a working man is that Jason Statham works for Michael Pena's character at his construction site, and Michael Pena's daughter is
Yeah.
like kidnapped by these people to be trafficked and later killed probably, and so Jason Statham is like hunting them down and trying to save her.
Mhm.
But like towards the end of the movie, there's a scene where she escapes them and then like fights back, and it's cool. To be fair, I kind of like that stuff a lot. Like I'm like, it's cool that it's not only Statham doing the action, but it's like she actually can fight for herself. Like she's got a lot
Sure,
of fight
yeah.
to herself. Like she's not just a victim. Like I'm like, that's
Mhm.
cool. But a lot of like the scenes in that section of the movie, like a couple sequences in a row, it's just like you just did a lot of stuff to get her to this location so that you can get Jason Statham to that location
Yeah.
so that you could have the final fight there because
Well,
that's like the place where you
they're,
want
like,
it.
about to kill her, like, 9 different times.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like you just do it happens a couple times in the movie where they just like do a lot of things like a big chunk of the plot is just like doing a lot of things to get to the thing that you actually want to do, which is like it's true about a lot of movies, but it's true mostly about bad movies. Like normally better movies move organically. Like you're like all of this matters to get me to where I have to go. Whereas like
Mhm.
if you're thinking about and I was while I was watching this, if you're thinking about why a scene is happening and then you get to the point where you're like, "Oh, that scene happened just so this can happen." It's not really like an exciting way to watch a movie. Like it's you know, it's a real
Sure.
letdown if that's like the whole plot of your movie is just like really only needing 3 or 4 scenes, but instead you have a 2-hour movie, you know? Like it's like a lot of the stuff that happens in between. And I think that that's you know, like a lot of the stuff in The Beekeeper is kind of like this battle, that like it's like all these like obstacles that he has to overcome to
Yeah.
get to the top. And like with this movie, the obstacles are like boring as shit. Like he has to like go undercover as this as like a drug dealer essentially so that he could like meet this Russian mobster and buy the drugs off of him so that he could like use him as an in to find the girl. And I'm like, you know, I enjoy like certain stuff like that where it's like a movie where you have like a really good planner, you know, like a guy who like
Sure.
has a plan and like he has to like do all these and he's very like strategic about how he gets information to like get to his goal. But
Mhm.
like the characters were so like none of it worked. And so that whole middle section of the movie where he's just like doing all these things to find her, I'm like, I could have just we could have just like fast forwarded through this and got to the end. I don't know if you feel the same way, but there's really nothing in like that middle section of the movie worked for me at all.
Yeah, I thought there was some characters that I thought were interesting that we get invited to, like, some of, like, the bad guys, just because 'cause they're, like, almost archetype, like, characters that, like, were it
Yeah,
was
they're kind of
just
like Beekeeper characters. That's the other similarity where there's like a couple
yeah, I
people.
kinda liked, like, the guy they meet they go to, like, this, like, biker, like, bar, and he has to, like, trying to kinda, like, prove that he's, like, legit, and he beats up a bunch of guys, and then there's this guy, like, sitting on the throne.
Yeah, Chidi okay, so that's the Chidi Ejiofor character who was in Gladiator 2, if you remember.
Yes, yeah,
He's
yeah.
like the big guy in Gladiator
I
2.
thought
Yeah.
he was fun,
I think he's cool. Yeah, he's
but,
fun.
like, it's not, like, movie changing stuff. It was like, "Okay, this guy's
Yeah.
fun."
He's like a
Um,
good, like, action actor, it feels like. Like, he's like a guy who could be, like, the big, uh,
um,
action villain.
yeah. All the stuff with David Harbour, I think is, like, a little ridiculous, but I think it's, like I think
I
it
kinda
there's
liked it.
well, I was about to say, like, it's ridiculous, but I think, like, there's a good movie that exists, like, where that, like, part is still
I
there
think there's a
because
better
I
movie
like
that exists where David Harbour goes into battle with
no,
him as,
I
like,
know
a
exactly.
blind man. I'm like,
I
"Dude,"
was
I
like,
was like, I really was expecting
I
him to
feel
be
like
like,
he
"Yeah,
was
I'm coming with you."
I feel like he was underutilized, and if, like, the second half of the movie turned into, like, this, like, buddy cop, like, Jason Statham and blind David Harbour, like, action movie, I think that would've, like, really lifted it up a
Well,
little.
I don't know if they were suggesting a sequel with this
Yeah,
or
exactly.
okay, because here's my thing. This is kind of and
They are
obviously,
they were suggesting a sequel with this because the way the movie ends is like this guy
yes,
who wants to kill Jason Statham, like
yes,
being
yes,
told
yes.
he can't do it, and he like
But
is like yelling in agony.
specifically on the subject of that guy, where I thought this movie was going
Mhm.
was that when the girl escaped,
Yeah, they were gonna
I thought
go to
I thought she was just going to find Jason Statham and
yeah.
that guy who was very mad at him, who was like the big mob guy, was
Yeah,
going to know where David Harbour's place is,
yeah.
and and they were going to go there, and Jason Statham was going to have to go save his daughter. I thought that that's what it was leading to,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that's kind of, well, it could be a number of things. It could be like David Harbour's character gets killed in the process, which would have been
oh
like
no.
an emotional thing for Jason Statham's character, which I think makes the movie better. It could also be like David Harbour just helps and like kills a bunch of people along with Jason Statham, both of which I think are cooler. Like I do, and I like the location. Like I think it's cool. Just
Yeah,
like
it's a
house
great
in the middle of
location.
nowhere where like he has a giant like arsenal of weapons. Um, like
Yeah, it almost feels like there was, like, another set piece action scene that, like, got written out of the movie, and they're like, "We're gonna save this for later," 'cause it feels like you got this one bad guy left, and then you have this location with, David Harbour, it's beautiful area, and they could have, like, got this whole home invasion, like, battle
yeah.
ending
And
thing.
and then also just like, I don't know. Again, I we do this sometimes when we shit on bad movies where we like kind of like rewrite it as a better movie, and like whether or not that stuff actually works, we'll never know. But
Yeah, no,
I
but I
do
think it's
think
funny.
there's no, but I do think there's like a better version there where you remove a lot of what I was saying, which is like a lot of like plot heavy stuff that like doesn't matter,
Mhm.
and then you still have a movie that's the same length, but that ends with that battle instead of the battle. I mean, the battle it ends with is also cool,
Sure.
but
No,
you could
there's
really
good action
you
in
could
this
really
movie.
do them back to back. You can just, you know what I mean? It's like the stuff at the end of the Beekeeper as well is like it's massive. It's like there's a
Yeah.
lot happening. So like there's no reason why you can't do like two of these battles back to back and cut out a lot of the stuff that like doesn't really matter, and have a much different movie. But like I do think that would make a lot of things work, because like I even
Mhm.
bought the emotional like
Yeah.
connection between him and David Harbour a lot more than like the other characters. But I'm like, this guy only shows up for like two scenes, and I'm like, but I believe that they are like that they're buds, like
No, yeah,
I
I think
believed that they were people I'm supposed to care about. So
yeah. No, I think David Harbour does a great job. I think, like, overall, the issue for me with this movie is, like, there's cool things that happen in the film. It's just, like, a cool thing will happen, and then it would take way too long to get to the next cool thing, and, like,
yeah,
we just need to, like, string some, wins together a little closer because I think there
yeah,
are elements that work, and it's, like, not, like, a total failure of, like, everything is bad about the movie, but I just think there are too many spots where it, like, gets kind of generic and boring that I think the script probably needs a rewrite or two,
I was
and
gonna get there. That's the only other complaint I have,
yeah,
is that like the script,
yeah, yeah,
not great. Not great on like an ideas level, not great on like a dialogue level, but then especially not great because it's a riff on like Taken and similar kidnapping movies, where
yeah,
like I think, because even what I thought about, and what I think about often when I talk about movies like this, is like Man on Fire came out before
yeah,
Taken.
yeah,
And people always talk about like these kidnapping movies in relation to Taken, but it's like, they existed before this, and Men on Fire is like a great example of that. Where
mhm.
I'm like, I don't know, I'm not saying whether or not Taken works, because I haven't seen Taken in years now, but like,
Yeah,
nor do I've seen all three of them. I don't plan on rewatching any of them, but like, I remember liking at least the first Taken. So like, as a concept, it works. Even though like Man on Fire is a better example of something like that. But Man on Fire like takes the necessary steps. Like they're like they're different movies, Taken and Man on Fire, and this is
yes,
like not a different movie than Taken. like
yeah,
mostly. I mean, it's different in tone and like but like plot wise, it's Taken kind of.
mhm.
and like it's
Yeah.
like a little bit boring. Whereas like Man on Fire like takes a lot of cool steps because like Denzel, like it utilizes Denzel in the same way that a movie like this could utilize Jason Statham as like this awesome action hero, where it's like all of the sort of side quests that he has to go on to get to the end goal are like fun and like I could see a movie like this doing that and working. But it's like a lot closer to the like Taken thing where Liam Neeson is like, like it's like this and this, like I'm an expert and like this is how I get to the woman in the end, which is like only cool if it exists before Taken, like it's like
Yeah.
this is just a better movie if it existed before Taken, but it doesn't. So like from a script level, I mean, obviously like this movie could still exist and work and function after, but as a script, it's like it's not really doing enough
Yeah.
to set itself apart, I think.
Uh,
Um,
I wasn't sure on the budget, and I said that like it feels lower budget. I looked it up. It reportedly Beekeeper was 40 million.
mhm.
What do you think this movie was?
Well, The Beekeeper was a pretty big success, so I feel like, or was it? No, The Beekeeper made a good amount of money, right? I mean, it made like over 100 million, I
I
think.
don't know. But Beekeeper was 40 million.
Yeah, so I would feel like they would give him more, but the way you're talking about it makes it sound like less. I'm gonna guess more still. I'll say like,
It's the same. They're both
oh,
$40
it's the
million
same.
dollars.
Okay,
So it's the
okay,
same budget, and then it's just like this one feels cheaper.
yeah, it does.
Which it just I think on like that level, it's just like a failure of like I don't know what really happened behind the scenes of this thing. Um, Also note, this is a Sylvester Stallone script.
Yeah.
We can talk about how like the script is rough. This was it's a Chuck Dixon novel who I'm not familiar with, and Sylvester Stallone originally wanted to make this a television series, and then it didn't really happen, and they like changed it to a film, and then it was up for sale, and then David Ayer and Jason Statham got attached to it. I doubt Stallone was ever meant to actually star in the thing. Maybe he was like a Stallone television show. Oh,
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, he
Wait,
does
who
still
did you say the author was
Chuck
of the book?
Dixon. Chuck Dixon. It's not called The Working Man. It's like the guy's like the name of the like Jason Statham character.
Okay, Chuck Dixon.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, I found the book.
Yes,
I
it's
found the
like
book.
Levin's Trade
But
or
yes, but Chuck Dixon is like seemingly a very successful comic book writer.
interesting.
He's written like a
Oh
ton
yeah, I
of
mean, kind of
Batman comics.
interesting. Interesting.
And then
Yeah.
this. It's just like
It's just
nothing but
Batman
Batman
comics in
comics and then
this.
this. Yeah, and then like I don't know why it says he's attached to this Hobbit stuff. Did he do like the Hobbit graphic novels? I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm confused because obviously he didn't write the Hobbit. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a
Interesting.
Sylvester Stallone script though. He's what was the last thing Stallone wrote? Um,
He says Dixon said he was offered a chance to rewrite on Expendables 2 screenplay, but Sylvester Stallone declined.
oh, really? Okay, so he did write the newest Rambo, and he did write Creed 2. Uh, that's the only Creed movie he wrote, though, which is funny.
Interesting.
And then obviously, yeah, he's written Expendables movies. He's done Rambo stuff. I mean, this stuff I knew already, but yeah. Expendables movies don't also exactly have the best writing. They don't
Yeah,
really need to, because the appeal of the Expendables is just that like 90 of the biggest action actors on the planet are all in the same movie together, which is like when you think about it, it's kind of shocking that those movies aren't a bigger deal and that people don't talk about them more because it's just like every famous action star ever like all in a movie
yeah,
and they're still not good enough to like to to be like a bigger cultural staple. I've seen all of them, I think.
oh wow.
Actually no, that's not true. I think I haven't seen. Didn't they make a more recent one? The fourth one? Yeah, I never saw the fourth one. Um, which I think is the worst according to Letterboxd average ratings. Um, also the cast in the fourth one is a real dip in quality from some of the previous ones. But anyway, now we're getting too far into Expendables territory. Let's talk about The Woman in the Yard, which is the movie of these two that we both liked more. Also, not a movie that people are liking a whole lot, but at least on our end of the podcast or our end of the movie sphere, um, even with Doug, who's not here, Doug liked this movie quite a bit as well. Like we all
Yeah.
liked it. It's directed by guy whose name gets harder to
Oh,
pronounce every time I read it. I
I
so
thought
so
I
I
thought
always
you
thought it
would be
was
ready with it.
no, well, okay, so the thing is like when you look up pronunciations of his name, like whether it's in
Yeah.
interviews or just like people like saying his name or whatever, they're like all different. Like nobody says it the same. And I've learned that he does pronounce his last name Colette Sarah. So like the last
Colette
name part
Sarah.
is Colette Sarah. But I thought it was like I think it's like Jamie or something.
Drama
It's
Colette
like it's like
Sarah.
Jamie or like yeah, I don't know.
Someone
It's
said
like
Jamie?
no, well, like it's like someone said it like Jamie, but with a U. So like Jami or like
Jami.
Jami. I don't know.
Jami.
It's but I don't know the exact pronunciation. So but just know it's him. And I'm quite a fan of him despite not knowing how to say his name. Apparently nobody knows how to say his name. He doesn't really seem to correct people either. So that's the other thing. It's like he's never been like, no, this is actually how you say it. I mean, I'm sure he has somewhere, but it's hard to
Yeah.
find that
I like his
online.
birthday party.
Um, yeah, sure. I
Like
think people at his birthday party know how to say his
he told
name,
the clown how to say it.
um, oh, the clown.
Oh, whoa. The clown
Um,
at the party.
no, but The Woman in the Yard is directed by him. He has famously directed
Black
like a
Adam.
lot of Liam Neeson action movies, a number of like pretty iconic horror movies from the past couple years, like most notably Orphan. And then, like you said, two like big blockbuster movies, Black Adam and Jungle Cruise, starring The Rock. Um, I have not seen Jungle Cruise. I'm sure I will
They
never
say it's
watch
good. They say it's
Jungle
good.
Cruise. Do
There's
they?
some
Who's
Jungle Cruise. There are some Jungle Cruise shooters. I'll say that.
okay? Okay, yes. There is one person who I follow on Letterboxd who I think you also follow, who gave it
Yeah.
5 stars. Um,
What if it's that hidden sauce? I can never say it's not until I've seen it.
yeah, this is true. I'm not like dying to watch it. But I have
I'm
seen
not.
Black
I want to
Adam.
watch The Shallows. Have you seen The Shallows?
No, but I should.
That's probably an
Um,
amazing movie.
yeah, that
That's
movie's
probably
probably good. I wanna watch The Commuter the most because I like
that's kind
Nonstop.
of
I
me.
also I also wanna rewatch Nonstop. Yeah, it is. But yeah, I think he's like when people look at his filmography at first glance, and I've heard many people do this, they're just like, "Oh, this is like a nothing guy." But I think he is a talented director. I think he's really good at making these like mid-budget action and horror films. I think he knows
Mhm.
what he's doing. His House of Wax movie is one of my favorite horror movies of like, since it came out, like the last 20 years, I want to say. I think it came out in 2005. Like I think he's a good director, and I think the Black Adam Jungle Cruise thing is literally just like what it looks like, which is a guy who likes making mid-budget movies, taking a check so that he could keep making more action and horror films that he likes make. Like it's not I don't
Yeah.
think it's hard to imagine somebody wanting to make millions of dollars off of Black Adam and Jungle Cruise so that they could go make a bunch more movies after. Um, Especially like a guy like this who has like
Yeah.
a pretty specific niche. Um,
His
yeah,
horror
and I
run his horror run seems pretty solid with House of Wax, Orphan, The Shallows, and then Woman in the
yeah.
Yard is his first horror movie in like 9 years.
Yeah, I mean the Orphan movies, I don't know about the sequels, but at least his Orphan movie, like I like that movie a lot. When I was younger, I loved that movie. Maybe I would rewatch it now and be like, this isn't all that. But
Yeah.
in general, I think it's pretty good. Like, especially even aside from it being good, it's like it's very iconic. I mean, that it was like,
Yeah.
at the time it was a huge deal. Like I,
Yeah, I wasn't
you
around
know,
back then.
yeah, you weren't around, but like at the time,
2009,
like
give me a break.
it was a big dude. It was like the big horror movie of like that year and for like a number of years to follow. Like in in casual conversation, me and my friends would talk, like all of my friends had seen Orphan at the time, and like all of us would talk like or bring it up like
Yeah.
pretty often. It was a big movie.
Isabel Furman, one of
And
our great actresses.
sure, yeah. I mean, it's a really good performance, yeah, in that movie. And I've rewatched it since, like not recently, but maybe like I don't know, like 6, 7 years ago or something, like when I
Mhm.
was older, and I still liked it back then. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a talented director, and I think here in The Woman in the Yard, he
Yep.
he shows that off a lot. Like, so the premise of the movie is that Daniel Deadwyler's character, her husband died in a car accident that she was also involved and injured in, and now she is left as a single mother with her two children at the house that her and her husband were planning on fixing up and turning into like their family farm, and she is still dealing with for I guess like what the movie specifies as like weeks or months now since her husband died. She has like been doing nothing but uh grieving and not like doing a great job taking care of her children in the process. And so randomly one day, uh a woman shows up in their yard as the title suggests. This woman is like dressed in all black, um symbolically, of course. And she is just like sitting in a chair in their yard. And then, kind of bad things start to happen. And it's like a very cool horror premise. I think the trailer we can talk about like totally pulled me in when they released the trailer the first time and I watched it. I was like, yeah, I want to see this movie immediately. I think it was like a really solid to the point horror movie. The trailer like does a good job pitching you on this like really high concept idea, which is just like the woman that's in the yard is creepy. Like
Yeah,
and she's
yeah,
just like
yeah.
sitting there menacingly, and you're like, and like bad things are gonna happen. And I feel like that's really all they needed to do to sell me. I was also obviously excited because of who was directing it,
Mhm.
but the trailer does a good job establishing what's so creepy about this, and then we can get into kind of like the the events of the movie. But
Yeah. I think with The Working Man, I was like immediately like, "Uh-oh." And with this movie, I was like, "Oh, this is a real movie." From like the first fucking 2 minutes of the movie, I was like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
this
oh,
is like
there's like a
this
couple
is legit."
like
There's like I don't know, I was
not
like,
even just like
"Whoa."
yeah, just like the opening, the way it's shot, like
Oh, I was like, "Oh,
very
okay, cool."
early. I was like, okay, this is what I
Yeah,
mean. Where
it's
I'm like, and where
I don't
there's
know,
actually there's
man.
other stuff I want to talk about with how people are talking about this
I'm
movie or
like,
how people talk about a lot of these
"Dude."
movies in general.
No, I'm like sold. I'm like
Uh,
in. I'm like, "Okay, let's go. Let's do this." And I mean, I kind of was the whole movie like locked in and like on the ride. I was, buckled up and like I was
yeah,
ready and I was interested and I was like really locked into the whole premise and the narrative. And yeah, for the whole movie I was in, and
yeah.
I was
There's a
team
couple.
woman in the yard.
There's a couple questions I have for you about like some of the movie's ideas and also like some of the horror setups in the movie. But
Yeah,
curious how you feel about Daniel Deadwyler in the lead, and then maybe also I guess the child performances.
yeah. I thought all of them were great. I like the. I mean, the little girl is pretty innocent, but I kind of like the complicated nature of everybody's kind of relationship and the, it was very real kind of mother, child kind of back and forth. They're both kind of hurting, and then it's the way that kind of affects the entire relationship and the entire
Right.
family, and how the daughter, there's nothing that she's doing wrong, but she's kind of still getting affected by it. Like it's like a trickle down effect of like all of the pain and suffering that they're going with. So yeah, I think the performances are really great. And I think especially with Dana Zedvire, because she's doing a lot of like we don't really know, what kind of version of her we're getting at this moment, and she kind of smoothly transitions into those things.
Yeah, because
And
she
so much
goes
stuff with
from like
her. Mace.
I think in the beginning of the movie, they do a good job framing some of the relationship, like the relationships between her and her children with this like breakfast scene and like,
Mhm.
even the tension between her and her son is like evident pretty immediately because he's like so worried about the power. And
Yeah. No,
um
I thought Peyton
there's
Jackson did a really good Peyton Jackson plays her
yeah,
son. I
I
thought he
thought
was
he was
great.
great. I think there's also just like I don't know, it's interesting as I what did you just do?
Nothing.
It's interesting as I like it's weird to say this because I I'm not in any position to like have and raise a family, but I feel
Mhm.
like even just as like I get old enough to understand what it is like to be an adult and not view the world from the perspective of like kid who gets mad at his parents over like little things
Yeah.
like the power going out, you know what I mean? It's like it was I was fascinated by how much the Daniel Deadwyler character, Ramona, I think is her name, right?
Yep. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I was fascinated by how much I like just kind of like understood and felt bad for this character who you're like kind of not always supposed to root for, but I'm like, well, a lot of these things happening where like she might be doing stuff wrong. I'm like, yes, you're like that is not the correct way to handle it. But
Yeah.
I can totally understand like where your frustration in life is coming from. Like even uh we're going to talk about some of the ideas of the movie, but even prior to her husband's death in a flashback scene, it's revealed that like she moves to this farm with him and okayed it, but it's like but she's not happy with like the life that she has. And I think we just kind of get into this now, but like a big way that people are talking about this movie is like another horror movie that is
About
about grief, which is like
yeah.
every horror movie is just like the big bad symbol is grief and like you're
Mhm.
dealing with some sort of grief. And like yes, I understand that that is a tired concept and that this movie obviously still involves that. It is a big idea in the movie, like undoubtedly. I mean, the whole setup of the movie is that her husband has died. There's no way around that. But like I do think that some of what it's talking about is not in all of those movies about grief, and that also it's not even technically the biggest idea in the movie, I thought. So like
Mhm.
and I will say I've seen a lot of people compare this to The Babadook, which is a movie I've never watched. So maybe The Babadook is the exact same movie as this, and
Yeah.
for that reason, I'm like totally in the
I'll
wrong
have to
here, and
watch the
everything,
Babadook.
yeah, everything I'm about to say is wrong because The Babadook is literally the same movie. If that's not the case, which I don't think it is, like some of that stuff is like kind of fascinating to me. The idea that she is like unsatisfied with living a life that is like seemingly good. Like she has a husband that she loves, children that she loves, like
Yeah.
and they have a good home and like she doesn't want to be there. She doesn't get to like pursue like work in a meaningful way, she says. Like she's like I can't work here, like in the city at least I could work. Like those are things that matter and like just having these like just like checking these boxes of like what the way that your life is supposed to turn out or whatever, like cuz it's a pretty simple path for a lot of people, which is just like grow up, get a job, have a family, and die. Like, it's not that simple for a lot of people. Like, obviously, like everybody has different wants and needs and desires, and like, but but you could frame it in a way where you're like, oh, it's selfish to have all this and not be happy. Like it's selfish to be a parent with like two kids, like two lovely kids, and rather than wanting to take care of them, like you still want things for yourself. Cause like, some of the stuff that she says is like, it's troubling, where she's like, oh, like then like I'll go back to the city. And like, and what she's essentially suggesting is that like he would just be left with their kid, like she would just leave them. And it's like, it's not a nice thing, but it's like, but she's also not happy with the way things are. And so I think that
Yeah.
really complicates things in a way that is like, it's like a movie that's like a little bit beyond just the normal ideas of grief because there is like you're not only like grieving your dead husband, but you're also like, uh not to say that other movies don't do this, but like you also feel guilty. Which like sure, other movies about grief involve guilt to some degree too, but like this is a a specific kind of guilt, I think, that like is not explored in all these movies. Like this idea of like, you know, what it ends up being about is her mental health. And we'll get to the
Yeah.
ending when we spoil stuff. But um yeah, I don't think that all of the other movies about grief are like talking about all of these things. I don't think that it's as simple as like this is another horror movie about grief and everything else is pointless. I was like very emotionally connected to a lot of what was happening. I really like felt for this woman. I was like, I both feel like she is both like a bad parent and like somebody who I genuinely can like understand like where all of her frustrations in life are coming from. Like I and it's all there. I think that like not only did I care about her because it's like it's a I think it is like a very emotionally driven thing and a difficult thing that like you believe that she cares about her kids. Like you believe that like those kids mean something to her. And
Hmm.
that also she still feels all of these other ways. Like it's like you can both love your kids and be like this isn't working for me. Like not and you can't that doesn't mean you can abandon your kids, but like it's fine to be dissatisfied with like where you are in life despite the fact that you have all of these things. And I think that's really interesting. I don't know how you felt about that, but that was a lot of like what I got out of
Yeah.
the movie beyond just the grief stuff.
Yeah. No, I think it does a really great job of kind of unraveling itself, and we're constantly kind of learning new. I mean, there's like a couple flashbacks, but I really there's this one like kind of moment that they go that they start with that she's like looking at it on her phone and she's replaying it over and over again. And there, I don't know. I think that there was an interesting kind of element of her holding on to like a reality that doesn't like is no longer there. Um, and I do think I think they kind of the way that they kind of unravel her kind of psyche and we kind of learn more and more about her and how she's kind of dealing with things and feeling about the situation um is almost it's I think the way they unravel it is very interesting because it's super the more we learn about the kind of villain or like kind of horror element of the film, the more
Yeah.
we're kind of learning about like these characters and like what we're initially told like these little like kind of bits like oh the dad died and she's not happy and then she's hurt and but we're kind of the kind of cracks of that are slowly being revealed and as the
Yeah.
longer we kind of go on the film.
Yeah, so there's two like before we get to the ending, I think because that's like something we kind of just have to talk about as a spoiler. Uh on the subject of that and like the horror mechanisms of the movie, like one, I think something that they do great is the tension that's just inherent to like the slow creeping up in the movie. Like it is just like this
Yeah.
isn't the only movie that's done this, but like using this like horror device where it's like the unknown, like this like creepy thing that is the woman, and she just gets closer and closer to the house as the movie goes on. And
Hmm.
it's like that's like very like bare bones, like but like creepy as shit the whole time. Like it's never not
Yeah.
creepy that she's getting closer to the house, even if she's not doing it. Like she's just sitting there. You know what I mean? But like the jump from like far away to like a little bit closer to like then when she's super close to the house, you're like, that's fucking creepy. And it's just like ticking slowly throughout the
Hmm.
movie. So like that's one thing where I'm like, this is a great device. But then also, and we can talk about a couple different like visual things here, but like the visuals of like when we actually see in the third act, like her what she's able to do, which involves like a lot of like shadows controlling stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's fucking awesome. I think that's like one of the big visual ideas. There's also like this whole idea of mirrors, which is related as well. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but they're both like the shadows and the mirrors that I think, like it's like it does separate this from just like the kind of bad horror movie a lot of people are going to label it as because it's done really well. I think like it takes a
Hmm.
good director to do that stuff. Both the
Yeah.
shadows and the mirror stuff is like awesome.
I thought the mirror stuff was really interesting, and I love the way this movie was shot in terms of like I think this movie would have been killed and really butchered with like a lot of shallow focus,
Yeah,
because there was really like a like search the entire frame, always looking around, always kind of you know observing and kind of because you're scared of something constantly popping out of, and she's constant like you're scared of her coming out of nowhere, so you're kind of constantly looking around the frame, looking for stuff, and there's really interesting mirror stuff. There's this one shot where I just remember looking at her reflection and she looks she like goes to look at the kid or whatever, and then the like mirrored version is just staring like right down your fucking face the whole time. There's some
yeah.
really interesting stuff, and
Well,
there's also this like there's these like glass things that happen where it's like mimicking the car crash, but there's like
right.
it's
But
I
like
don't
you
really
could
know how to
see the
describe it, but
shards.
it's
Yeah,
really cool. But I think that I love the shadow stuff, and I love that once she's like in the house, basically, it becomes this like haunted house movie
yeah.
almost, which I really
It
enjoyed. I thought that was
it
fun.
pulls. I think a lot of people might get caught up in the idea of like, oh, how does this person how do the powers actually work?
Sure.
Whereas like for me, I thought it was a really interesting like subversion where when they realize that she's getting in through the light, they close all the window, like they cover all the windows, they make the house completely dark, and then it's just like a trap. Like she was like
Mhm.
fucking with them. You know what I mean? And it's like because like I think a lot of people are going to get confused in the logic, and like the logic is that like she has just outsmarted them. I think she just made it seem like she needs the light so that you
Yeah.
could set up what is like this third act where they're in a pitch black like dark house, and actually she can just get right in. Like it's like the light means nothing, and I could just like come
Yeah.
inside because I'm like because she's still like a woman. Like it's like
Yeah, yeah.
the function of her character is confusing, but it's like she's still like she can still exist there. And so like she just comes right in and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's fucking awesome. Like trapping like going from it's because a big thing is like I think when Midsummer came out, a lot of people talked about like horror like in the daylight. And
Mhm.
obviously, like most horror movies, like you want to work with the dark and like nighttime because that is inherently scary. And it's cool that this like does it both ways, where it's like it utilizes both like how creepy she is sitting out there in the day, and then it still eventually gets you to like this, like you said, like haunted house that's completely
Mhm.
dark. And both things work. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think like the actual approach to horror, especially considering that it's PG-13, which is like written off a lot of time now, where it's like PG-13 horror movie not going to be that fun. And even I've done it myself, like there's a lot of PG-13 movies where I just go into it expecting it to be bad because it feels like you really need an R label to get a horror movie that I'm going to enjoy out there. But like, not always the case. It's often the case because there's very few PG-13 horror movies that I have fun with, but like, it's not always the case. And this is like, I think, doing a lot of good, creepy stuff while maintaining that PG-13 label, which I think is important also because like, the most fun audience for a movie like this, like the most exciting a movie like this will ever be, is when you're that age, like when you're like a teenager who wants to like go see a horror movie with your friends. And so it's like PG-13 horror for that reason is like kind of awesome because like obviously you could sneak into R-rated movies, but for the most part, like being like a 13, 14, 15-year old and like wanting to go see a horror movie in theaters with your friends, like that is like the ideal time to go watch something. And I think it's still pretty scary. I don't know how you felt, but there's like,
Yeah.
I was definitely on edge for a lot of the movie.
Yeah, there's this one sequence where the teenage boy he goes out to like the shed and you like see her like kind of peeking around, and you're kind of you're almost waiting for this like jump scare moment, and that's kind of it doesn't really like really rely on jump scares. It's not like a big jump scare movie, but it almost is like
Yeah.
it's kind of telling you, hey, like something's gonna fucking happen, something like constantly. It's kind of giving you those warning signs rather than actually just like spamming you with jump scares. It's almost like at any
Yeah.
moment anything fucking can happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it like kind of maintained like a creepiness and a scariness to it the entire time.
Yeah.
Even without her, like there's like some scenes where there's like some manipulation of like the Daniel Deadwise Ramona, like what she's seeing in reality is not really what it seems. And like there's a scene where like she like stabs her daughter, which is like really haunting and like
Yeah.
terrifying.
No, for sure.
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting ways that they kind of set up these like horror images that really are effective.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, even um the stuff with mirrors where it's like obviously like the big thing with the mirrors is that it has thematic weight because of this like other universe and like kind of a reflection and blah blah blah. But like mirrors are also just like one of the scariest things that you could put in a horror movie. You know, like horror's been doing that shit for like horror movies have always utilized mirrors. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's when you look in a mirror, like you're in a horror movie, you're creeped out. You're always expecting some shit to happen when there's a
Mhm.
mirror in a horror movie. So like yeah, I think they do all of that stuff really well. I agree about the scene that you mentioned where the son like sneaks outside. I thought that was like the most tense I was maybe during the whole movie was when he snuck outside. I was like, because this is yeah, I don't because there's like they do such a good job making you realize things in that moment too, where it's like first he sneaks outside, then he notices that like the dog's not there. So like now everything's already off. Like
Yeah.
you know that there's like something going on. Like he knows that there's something going on. And so like you kind of like inherit the fear of like his character where you're like seeing the movie from his eyes now and you're like oh the dog's not here like something is wrong that woman is like creepier than like my mom lied to me you
Mhm.
know and it's like and then you're like in this situation where like when he's in the car he realize or you know what I mean like he sees and realizes that like oh fuck like she's not there and then all of a sudden it gets you know it gets really scary so
Yeah.
I do think it works well as like from a strictly scares perspective, which you
Yeah.
know
Well,
ultimately
you
not
talked
that.
about the like not the rules and like the character not really having like very like set in stone like logic to like her powers that we like don't really fully understand her. I think that's like a reason why it's scary is because we're learning more and more about like what she can do, but we never are like fully like in control of like knowing exactly like what she is or like what she can do. So we're always
Yeah,
like hit with like different surprises of like how she's able to kind of manipulate the environment and location and kind of pop out of nowhere. And
yeah,
I think that's the element of why it's scary is like because they're the logic of that powers or whatever you want to call it isn't really set in stone ever. We're always kind of like not sure what she's able to do, and she's playing with
yeah,
that, like you said, like she's playing with that. How
yeah.
we don't really know
It's
what she's able to do.
it's maybe my only like complaint, and I don't know if you feel the same way. And maybe other people who watch the movies feel the same way, but like on the subject of the unknown and like how creepy that is,
Mhm.
it is I do think I would be even more scared if they waited even longer to reveal her as a woman rather than just her covered up
Yeah.
and like ominous. Because it's just like you do just get scared more by the idea of like, you know, like once you see that she's just a woman, and to be fair, it's still a good performance. She still manages to come across as very creepy
Mhm.
when you do see her as a woman, but like there's just obviously a difference between like this thing that you can't understand and that makes no sense to you and that is like creeping you out because you don't know what it is versus like oh that's a woman you know obviously
Sure.
later on it still ends up being scary because it's a woman who can do a lot more than just be a
Yeah.
normal woman. And then specifically, like when she's in the attic and she's like towering over you, like she does do. Like I said, it's a good performance. She is like doing a good job, still being creepy as that. But like at least when she's first revealed, I'm thinking of like the scene where the son has like the gun outside. I'm like now he's just kind of pointing a gun at a woman, which is like,
Mhm.
she's still like ominous or whatever because like she's making him nervous, obviously. But like, I feel like I would have been even more scared of her in that scene if I just didn't see her face.
Mm.
Like there's something there to that. But I don't know at some point you would have had to reveal her face because of what they end up revealing later. And so I don't know when a good time to
Yeah.
do that otherwise would be. So I get why they revealed it.
Yeah, I think,
But
like, you have to reveal that it's not Daniel Deadwyler, like, you have to reveal
sure.
that it's a different face there,
Yeah.
um, but I do agree with you that it's
Spoilers, by the way.
yeah, well, I do agree with you that it is more scary, like, it's scarier when she has maybe, like, she I don't know, but I do also, like, it's like you have to reveal it somehow,
Yeah.
but I do think, yeah, there's nothing scarier than, like, that black kind of figured like whatever, like veil.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know because it's like, well, it's weird because that there's like still a woman under there because she like you
Sure.
could kind of see through it and you see her hands obviously so you're like it's a
Yeah.
person, but even still the unknown makes your mind go to like, oh, this is going to be a person who looks really scary
Yeah, she's
rather than,
beautiful.
yeah, she's just like a real woman, like she's not like she doesn't have like some like like some crazy like alien underneath the
Yeah,
like
maybe
it's
like
just
her
like,
she like eyes like bugged out and like she has
no,
like
yeah, she's just
Beetlejuice in
like,
it.
yeah, no, but she's just like a person under there.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, it makes a difference. I also, yeah, we know we won't we spoiler alert. The only other thing we really have to talk about is the ending of the movie, which is incredibly bleak. Like it I'm
Yeah.
surprised, especially because of that PG-13 label. I was shocked even more that it like
Yeah, I
went
didn't
to
realize it was
the dark ending.
PG-13.
I thought it would be because of that label, I thought it would have like a little bit more of a neat, like happy ending. Not the case at all. In
Yeah.
fact, I've seen a lot of people describe it as like an even kind of offensive ending because of the implications of what it might be suggesting about mental health. Um,
Uh-huh.
I think, I think it's uh, a difficult conversation to have wholly, and like we don't have to get into all the specifics. I I could definitely see the perspective that somebody watching this movie has if they're like, oh, this is just a bad mental health movie or like a bad
Mhm.
depiction or like that it's suggesting something bad. I personally liked how bleak it was quite a bit. I don't know if you felt the same way. Did you like the ending? I'll spoil what it
Yeah,
is in a second.
I did not think it was gonna go there. I thought I wish almost I like where I didn't mind where it went, but I kind of liked there's a scene where like this like tunnel, there's like this tunnel, and then she
Right.
goes through a mirror, and then she's like in this like alternate kind of mirrored reality. And I wish they kind of went more into the like weird. I wish there was more weird stuff that was happening. But I
Yeah. There's a scary scene in there too. When he
yeah,
comes
yeah,
up
yeah, yeah,
behind
yeah,
her, I'm
yeah,
like, that was
yeah.
fucking scary too.
But that's again getting into like we're just rewriting the movies.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was happy that it's bleak, but it does end happy, right? Or am I
Does
misreading the
it though?
movie?
I don't think it does. I
Okay,
feel
well,
I feel as though it's like, you know, um well, so
mhm.
the end of the movie for
Yeah,
people listening is that you find out that this woman in the yard, this woman dressed in all black, is like trying to convince the main character, Daniel Deadwyler's character, to leave her children behind and commit suicide.
yes.
And then what we get is you see her getting ready to do it,
Mhm.
and then you see her greet, like it cuts to her seeing her children again after, like her children coming
Yeah,
back after she's let them leave, and like they go into their house and they're all happy,
and it's like
and
video games for everybody.
Yeah, and, like, everything is, like, at the power turns back on, everything is,
Mhm.
like, good, and then the closing shot is her painting with her name written on it, but her name
Backwards.
has the R backwards, which is to suggest, as the movie does earlier, that this is some kind of mirrored reality
Oh, yeah.
and not her reality. And
Gotcha.
so at least that's how I
Oh, so
interpreted it, is
you're
that so
interpreting it that she
she's
did kill
dead, and
herself.
this is like a sort of, you
I
know,
see.
dream reality,
Okay,
dream
I see.
world, the alternate, yeah, because of that mirror. I guess
Alright.
I don't think it's impossible to read it as not that,
No, but
but
I understand what you're saying.
my
I see what
perspective
you're
was that
saying.
she did it, was that she
So
killed herself and
you
left her
left it
children
okay.
behind.
That
Because
might be
there's
the
also like this
consensus.
like incredibly, I thought, and again, I don't know that this is what a lot of people are going to get out of or not that they will get it out of the movie, but that they will feel this about the movie. I
Yeah,
felt like really connected to the characters on an emotional level, where when there is a scene where this woman in the yard is talking to Daniel Deadweiler, and like she kind of like puts her hand over like their pictures of them as a kid, and the pictures
yeah,
switch to pictures of them like grown up, and she
yeah,
like sees this world, and what she's saying is like, this is what's going to happen to your kids if you kill yourself. Like, when you kill yourself, your kids are still going to grow up to do
yeah, that
all of
was
these
kinda
great
crazy.
things. And it's so sad, dude. Like, I started tearing up in the like I was
Yeah,
crying in the theater. I was like, that is incredibly dark to to be like, your kids are actually better off if you kill yourself. Like, it's like, and and
yeah,
that's where you kind of get into this territory where it's like, is this a healthy depiction of mental health? And I'm like, you know there's obviously ways to read it as like, this is fucked up, but also there's ways to read it where it's like, I don't, like, I really do think that making movies that are this complex about their portrayals of mental health, and oftentimes cave into like our, like our worst desires, are valuable movies to exist. Like, I do think it's valuable to have a movie where the conversation you have afterwards is like, this person killed themselves because they thought that the world was better off without that. Like, they thought that their kids would be better off without them, and that, like, like, it's, again, like I said, it's complex. It's like, nobody should be suggesting that like that's what you should do, and I don't know that the movie technically is suggesting that that's what you should do, but it's what happens in the movie.
mhm.
I think, and I don't think it's invaluable to have a movie like that. Like, I think it's there's still like conversations to be had there. I don't know. And yeah, I guess you can interpret it as like, I don't know. I find it difficult to find a way to interpret the movie as optimistic. I feel like the only way that I saw the movie when it ended was like, yeah, she
Yeah.
killed herself. But I don't know if you've seen or heard other interpretations.
Yeah, I
Um
don't know. Well, I like there's a scene where the little girl, keeps writing her R's backwards, and the way that I was, like, interpreting that scene was, like, that they were in the flip right, they're in the flipped world, right? So she's seeing I don't really know if this makes total sense, but I was like, one seeing the R one way and the other seeing it the other way, so they're getting, like, mad at each other because one is, like, seeing the, like, flipped R because 'cause they're like, "Do it this way," and then she's like, "Okay, I did it this way," and then it's like, maybe I'm like I don't know, there was something to that, and yeah, I don't know, I guess I don't know. I don't
oh, so
really
you
know.
think that the ending with the flipped R would be like her accepting her daughter, and
No,
like,
I
and
don't know, I
actually
don't know.
like,
No, no. I don't know.
it's like all nice and sweet.
No. I was
No, I
just
mean,
like
I don't think it's like I think you'd have to do some
I well, my
uh
whole thing was like, I don't really know exactly there's like the mirrored element of it, and I don't entirely fully get
yeah, listen, I'll say that it's not a
when we
perfect movie. It's not
I
a
don't know
perfect
when we
movie,
are in mirrored world and not. That's what I'm saying, where it's like
It I think that's part of the complexity and why people don't like the mental health
Mhm.
thing, because the movie throws a lot of ideas at you and not all of them are fully fleshed out or explored or like even functioning.
Yeah.
It kind of like takes a while to decide that it's actually by the end a movie about mental health rather than a movie about all these other things. I do still think some of those things tie in, where it's like her grief over her husband ties into why her mental health is the way that it is, obviously, and so on. But like, I think this idea about like whether or not she's self, because the other thing is like s- uh suicide is kind of perceived not as much, maybe, or maybe less so now, but definitely still to some degree by a lot of people as like a kind of selfish act, where it's like uh you're doing something that hurts people around you, and like, and it's all like you're doing it for yourself and blah blah blah. It's, there's a lot of complicated conversations about mental health that I think
Yeah.
aren't really explored this way, because it does end up being as simple often as a lot of people like to make it seem, which is like something that I've never particularly liked, and why a lot of like my favorite depictions of mental health in movies are a little bit more complicated, because I've never really liked this idea of like making movies where not to say that, listen, like, I'm a sensitive person who likes movies that are happy and sweet and like make you feel good about yourself. You know what I mean? But but the idea that like a lot of movies about the subject boil down to like, people are there for you. All you need to do is talk to someone and like things always get better. It's like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
a very simplistic way to view such a complex idea. Not to mention how different all of these things, whether it's like the depression that's onset from grief in this movie, or like, like everybody, everybody's mental health situation is like so different, that to kind of suggest that the same pretty simple solution over and over and over again in so many movies and shows and whatever, it like, to me, it's like a little bit boring. I'm like, yeah, I'll cry at it every time because I think it's sweet. I do ultimately believe in like the power of like people to be good, and that like, despite all of the fucking reasons why you might be depressed, it's like, there's a reason to live, and there's people that care about you and so on. It's like, obviously I agree with these sentiments. I think they are all true. I think it's also still good to make art that is not that. Um, so I don't know. And maybe I'm misinterpreting this to some degree, because like I'm sure other people have perspectives about how it's uh portrayed, maybe even based on their own experiences that aren't my experiences, that make it seem a little bit more troubling than what I see it as, which is like, yeah, it's, to me, I'm like, it's just bleak, and that makes sense. Is it like,
Mhm.
it's fucked up. It's incredibly fucked up. Um, and I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think at the very least it like spawns an interesting conversation. Um, whether the movie's not ever going to be big enough for this to be a meaningful conversation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. And I think it's a cool, if not, obviously like a little bit troubling ending to like an imperfect movie, but like a movie that I think is still, well acted, very well directed. Like I do think I think there's a lot more good in the movie than there is bad. And I do think a lot of the ways that people have talked about the movie as like another horror movie about grief, and specifically something that I noted in my Letterboxd review, that like everybody just talks about it like they're like, oh, another Blumhouse movie that sucks. And I'm like, you guys are doing the A24 thing. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm like shocked that nobody has, I never see people say this, but it's like people talk about Blumhouse like they direct all of their movie. I'm like, this is not, it's not a thing. Like a person
No,
made this movie.
I thought about that the same way. I immediately, Blumhouse could talk about so much like this in like a negative light, and
Yeah, this was happening with them
I
before
don't.
A24 even. Like I
This has
remember
been
people talking
happening for
about
a
them just,
long time,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
and
Like I remember 10
I
years
think
ago
it's
people talking about
lame. I
Blumhouse.
think it's lame. I think Blumhouse, like it's like okay, are you like oh look another Blumhouse win with Whiplash? It's like it's like
Didn't Blumhouse produce Get Out?
yeah, yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like it's just like an easy they're like an easy target.
listen, I
I
get
think
it. They put their ratio of bad to
but
good horror movies that they put out
but
is
that's the
probably
whole like
greater than any
Blumhouse like
studio.
thing. It's like
Yeah,
Blumhouse is
is
like, okay, we're gonna give a bunch of these like low budget movies. We're gonna make a bunch of
yeah,
low budget movies. We're gonna try to hit on like a certain percentage of them. And that is like such an important part of the ecosystem. And I think like the negative talk about something like that is really confusing to me because we need more Blumhouses and more like because like the whole death of the mid-budget movie and all of that conversation is like we need more of these like companies that are just like their whole thing is like okay we don't have to win on every movie right but we're gonna try to it's like that whole Cord Jefferson speech where he talks about
yeah, right.
let's not make a $200 million movie let's make a bunch of $10 million movies right like
Yeah,
that's Blumhouse that is what Blumhouse does and it's primarily like the horror genre like that is their niche and horror is great for that and horror's whole model kind of is
yeah,
almost like the bang for your buck like make a low budget movie make
yeah.
$20 million off it or whatever and profit and that's their whole thing I think that is so important again for the ecosystem and I think there are good Blumhouse movies you don't have to like every one of them, but it's like I don't know. I did disagree with the kind of notion or the kind of negative kind of talk about like another bad Blumhouse movie.
Yeah.
Especially I mean with this one, I think it's a good movie, but it's like you don't
Yeah.
have to watch them. I don't know. It's like
Yeah, no,
like
of course.
if you think the
I
movie looks if you think the movie looks bad, you don't have to watch it. Same thing with like
Yeah, it's weird
A24.
because, like,
It's just
so
like
much of
watch the
that
ones you think look good.
yeah, so much of that conversation too with, like, what A24's become as a brand is people being like, "Oh, well, there's a new A24 movie, I'm gonna go see it." And it's like, the way that these same people talk about Blumhouse is like, they're
Right.
like, "Oh, Blumhouse does nothing but make bad horror movies." Yet, they're always just like, "New Blumhouse movie? I'm gonna go see it." So it's like, like, what do you
Yeah, but
want? You know what I mean? It's like,
there
why do
is
you
almost a level of like new Blumhouse movie. I'm not like I know people
Oh, who are
that
like, "I'm not gonna go see it?"
aren't gonna see The Woman in the Yard because it's a Blumhouse movie, and
Yeah,
I think
I do
that's
know those people
I
too,
think
I get
that's kind of a ridiculous opinion to have.
Yeah.
You can think it looks bad and not want to go see it, but be like, oh, Blumhouse movie in March, I'm not gonna go see that because it's
Yeah,
gonna be
that's
obviously
where my,
bad.
that's where, like, my frustration comes from is because, like, like, I really like Colette Sarah as a director. I'm like, it's kind of crazy to just, like, dismiss a guy who knows how to make a movie just because of the studio. It's like, I don't know. That's a different conversation entirely. I wonder, we'll move on to the news in a second. Do you think that the reason why this movie is getting mostly negative reviews is essentially what we summarized as, like, it's just simply about grief again, which is something that people are tired of, and also that it's like,
Um,
like it's repetitive, and like maybe the Blumhouse side of things, or that it's, I don't know. I think there's like a pretty simple answer to, like, why people are not liking it, and it's most of those things where it's like they're either tired of this formula, or it's not scary enough or something. You know.
I think the scary thing is a factor. I think people definitely thought they were getting a different movie, maybe
Sure.
than they signed
Yeah.
up for. I think that's not a great excuse or criticism. I do think that's probably a part of it. I don't really fully understand why it's being kind of seen as like a bad movie per se. I understand if you don't agree with like the kind of messaging or the ending or whatever, fine. I think the movie's constructed in like a way that's it's just clear to me that it's like a well put together film, like from
Yeah.
like the first 10 minutes of the movie. And there are so many bad horror movies that get lifted up. And for this to be one that is kind of seen as like just another piece of garbage, like I don't really get it. But I'm not surprised
Yeah,
really.
I do think there's, like, this kind of impossible, like, I think horror is always divisive, and, like, a reason why horror doesn't have, even, like, using Letterboxd as an example, like, you're never seeing, unless it's like a Get Out, like I mentioned, or very very few. You're not seeing horror movies with like a 4.0 on Letterboxd or something. And I think like a
Yeah.
big obstacle is that just so much of the average person's relationship to horror movies is like, did it scare me? And it's like, if you are a person who is a fan of horror movies, I mean, how often is that happening? At some point, you have to like start treating them as movies. You know what I mean? Right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
like, it's like I get scared pretty easily. But even now, at this point in my life, I've seen enough horror movies and I go to the movies often enough to see new horror movies that like it's very rare that they actually scare me. And so at some like, it's like, and that's not a fault of the horror movies. It's just like, you like it's just what it is. Like it's like if you're watching some of these people only watch horror movies. You know what I mean? Like a lot of horror
Yeah.
fans are just they're not like movie fans. They're people who like horror movies specifically. And so it's like if you're spending this much time watching horror movies, at some point you have to consider like there's got to be something more for you there than just the horror. Because after you've seen enough of them, even the good ones you're going to be disappointed by. So like you know what I mean? Like at what point do you get tired of like only going for the scares and like start to treat them as movies? I think is like an important conversation for these people to have with themselves, because it's like once you've seen 100, 200, 300 horror movies, there's no like one, 9 out of every 10 horror movies you watch after that point, you're going to be like, that wasn't scary. But it's like a lot of
Yeah.
those could still have something valuable there.
I
I don't
made a
know.
post about this a while ago, but I do think there is it's not a problem, but there is something to be said about the person you're talking about, the horror fan that only watches horror movies, being very similar to the person who only watches Marvel movies, the person who only watches Disney movies, whatever. They're just like not being interested in like cinema as like a form, and the way they kind of interact in the relationship with the movies. And I think it's really weird. And yeah, they're looking for something else. They're going to the theater looking for something else, and if it's not checking that box, it's all automatically kind of seen as a negative experience or a bad movie. Where for our standpoint, it's like we're going to see a good movie. We want to see a good movie. We want to see that, not necessarily like we're just like only in it for like this like specific. It's such as a narrative.
Yeah.
It's a narrowed view of cinema, and it's a narrowed view of the experience. And I think you get that when
Yeah.
like anytime like a Marvel person is watching a different movie or something that they're, or even like with the superhero movies, like there's superhero movies that I think are great movies, but they're not great superhero movies in the way that like they get like super anal about certain nitpicky things. And there's
Sure.
I think that's something to have a conversation. It's a longer conversation we could do at another time, but I do think there's something to be said about when there's certain horror movies get lifted up and certain movies get left behind, that might be a little backwards. And it's interesting which movies there's more of an alignment on.
Yeah.
um
No, yeah. And I
but
mean,
like
obviously,
it's
like,
almost alignment but for different reasons. Like
yeah.
it's like these guys are happy for this reason, these guys are happy for a different reason, and it's
Yeah.
like a rare occurrence there.
No, and I want to be like clear in saying that like I also enjoy these things. Like we all also enjoy these things. Obviously, part of good horror filmmaking is some filmmakers are good at engineering scares, which like matters. I mean, it's integral to the genre, but that's
No,
it's obviously a lot
I
more
love
than
horror
that.
movies. I do.
Yeah,
I
like
think it's the great genre of that, like
yeah,
for me, I can't get enough of it. But I do
yeah,
think the culture behind the people who only see horror movies is kind
yeah.
of a
It's
negative towards the
yeah,
kind of the way we talk about horror movies.
sure, yeah,
Um, but
yeah. Anyway,
they keep them alive. It's like the whole like the Marvel
yeah, no, of
movies save
course,
the
yeah,
theaters. It's like
yeah, the ecosystem. They're valuable to the ecosystem for
it's
sure.
all about the ecosystem. The ants gotta eat the mud.
Yeah. Yeah, the freaking what do they say in The Beekeeper? To go back full circle, they say like something, I don't know.
I don't
Anyway,
I don't
I
know.
don't fucking it's
I don't know. The beekeeper quote on the top of my
no,
head.
it's like you gotta protect the hive. Is that what they say? They're like, you gotta protect the hive.
Sure, sure.
And something like that. Anyway, that's the woman in the yard, not the beekeeper, and a working man. We're gonna talk about some news. Want to remind people listening, of course, to share some feedback. If you like listening to us talk about these two movies, you can like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. You can rate the episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can follow us on all of our platforms, Twitter or wherever else. It's all in the episode description. We've got a like a number of kind of significant pieces of news. I wanted to start with like the more serious news, which is kind of these things are uh, both serious, but both like have to do with a related issue, I guess. Which is the first big one, kind of the biggest piece of news over the last week was that the co-director of No Other Land, who was also a recent Oscar winner, Hamdan Bilal, was attacked and kidnapped by Israeli settlers. I'm leaving out some details because there's a lot more that happened there, but essentially he was attacked and kidnapped, returned home a day later, and then the follow up to this was that the Academy put out a statement, um, which was a very weak statement, a statement that also did not even name him specifically, which I thought was just like super distasteful. But then as a result, over 800 now, I think maybe even 900 now, Academy members have voiced their, like distaste with the Academy's response and showing solidarity with Hamdan Bilal in like an open letter that they wrote and signed. I don't, for the purpose of celebrity, if you want, you could go look up these people. There's a lot of big names on the list. Like I saw Olivia Colman, I saw Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
The list goes on. I'm not going to sit here and read the names to you guys, but there's a lot of a number of notable celebrities that signed this open letter. I think that is aside from the fact that the actual main story about what happened to Hamdan Bilal is like incredibly devastating and fucked up, and like you can't imagine how many people of less international significance, how many other Palestinians who don't have Oscars are treated by the same settlers without us hearing about it at all. But from the Academy perspective side of things, I think it is important that this many members so immediately like signed an open letter and were like, no, you're actually wrong. Like to see
Yeah.
that kind of outreach from like the Academy, like it's like we've talked about it on the show before that it's kind of a even in the way that they judge art and like when we talk about the Oscars, it's like it's kind of a somewhat spineless institution
Oh
where
yeah,
like
for
a
sure.
lot of like a lot of their approach to politics is really lame, and like how they judge works of art that are very political is pretty lame, and like they're always like trying to pat themselves on the back and whatever, and it's like but to see that there's like a strong contingent, like almost at this point, even just in the immediate days, nearly 1,000 people, which is a bit, like a big percentage of the academy, still not a majority of the academy,
Yeah.
but a big percentage of people in the academy are like, no, actually, like you guys are fucking wrong for this. Is a good thing. Like I think it's good to, especially
Sure.
because something that we talked about with like the incoming Trump presidency is that like a lot of in moments like this, like when there's all of the stuff that's currently happening, like a lot of Hollywood just kind of steps aside and they're like, oh, Trump's in office now. Like, and like they'll speak out about this, that, and the other thing, but then they're also like, they're very mindful of who is in charge.
Yeah.
And so to have like a number of people being like, no, you need to do better, I think is an important thing to happen. Like I think it's
Mhm.
really cool, and I think that the people that signed that letter are, not to say better than the other Academy members, but they are, like it's a good thing that they did that. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add, but
Yeah, that whole I don't know. It was only like a day, but the it was like I don't know. That was one of the craziest like news like kind of things that happened in
yeah, I
terms of
mean the
just like
Oscars were like 3 weeks ago.
no, yeah, it was
Like
so I don't know. I think the whole I guess the Academy that it wasn't surprising like the the lack of support in terms of the immediate but it was still like kind of shocking. And
yeah,
it's like you just and that it got gonna go on that like spineless thing of like just like okay you just like celebrated this film and
and yeah, now
now
you just like don't
when
care
they
about
need
one of the
you the
filmmakers.
most, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, so it's like, what was actually the purpose of your support?
yeah.
But something worth noting, I think that I noticed at least was I was I was reading the full list of names who signed this open letter,
Hmm.
and a lot a lot of those names were people in the documentary branch. And so,
Okay.
similar to like what paved the way for No Other Land winning, which I think, and I think will become more of a theme as we go on, is that like a lot of people choose to not vote in certain categories. And I
Hmm.
think that the documentary members of the Academy uh, are like people with a lot more empathy and more of a spine when it comes to these
It's a
political.
different group of people for
It's yeah,
sure.
it's a different group of people, and so I think that like when I was looking at the names and it said like what branch they were in alongside the name, and then I got to D for documentary, and it just like
Hmm.
it went on for a while, and I was like, okay, this makes a lot of there's like I said, I named a couple people. There's a lot of other like big actors and big directors. Like I think Denis Villeneuve was one of the big directors on there. Like there's
Yeah,
big people who
Glazer.
signed it. Yeah, but a lot of them are part of the documentary branch. And so that's like, I don't know, it's something that you think about because it's like, does the Academy really value art like this, or does the documentary branch of the Academy really value art like this? Because it's like maybe it is just that, obviously there's still
Yeah.
support elsewhere, but a lot of that support and a lot of probably the reason why No Other Land won best documentary is because of the other documentary branch members, like the carrying
Yeah,
it out.
well, it's like that branch isn't really like celebrities. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly. Like
they're
none of
like
these people, there's
working
very few
they're
people
like
there.
working filmmakers who like dedicate their
Yeah.
life to this
Like I
thing.
saw
It's not really like they're making millions of dollars off these documentaries.
yeah, like I saw Laura Poitras on the list, and she's the one who did All the Beauty and the Bloodshed a few years ago, along with like a bunch of other like pretty notable documentaries in the past. Like she's
Yeah,
won an Oscar, I think, or multiple Oscars maybe. And she's not even close to a mainstream. I mean, nobody knows who she is, and it's like,
yeah,
and she's like an Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker. So, yeah, I don't know, just something to keep in mind about that. But and then kind of like similar subject, at least in terms of the topic. Uh, Rachel Zegler, a piece was written in Variety this past week that you could pretty much only describe as a hit piece,
hmm,
which suggested that the new Snow White movie is failing at the box office solely because of Rachel Zegler, and a big uh, part of that article is mentioning that she was outspoken in support of Palestine,
yeah,
and also mentioning that you guys could go read the full article, but like a big like just this is the fucking worst piece of writing ever thing about the article was that they were like, and Gal Gadot, they were like, all Gal Gadot did was like support the Israeli
yeah,
hostages, and it's like, yeah, that's all she did, dude. I'm sure. Like, it's like, like shut the fuck up. Like, it's very annoying. It's very frustrating the way that it's framed. A lot of people have brought attention to the fact that the writer has this is not their first time
yeah, yeah,
in the hit piece space. They also wrote a very negative article about Melissa Barrera when she was outspoken about Palestine and all the Scream stuff. They also wrote stuff about Amber Heard. Just like a kind of a speaking of spineless, a really spineless writer over there at
yeah.
Variety. Or maybe not even spineless. Maybe there actually is an agenda there, but like just a kind of just a real asshole. So
Yeah, I think it also reflects on like the spineless nature of Disney, um,
yeah,
and the way that they've handled this entire. I mean, I feel like this whole Rachel Zegler Snow White situation has been going on for a decade now, and it's really. I mean, the stuff that Elon puts on my fucking Twitter is ridiculous. Like the amount of negative reactions to her just playing not only what she says in terms of like her support of Palestine and stuff like that, but just like the negative response to her just playing Snow White is like the most disgusting stuff ever. And everything you hear about the movie from like respected critics is like she's the only good part about the movie.
yeah,
And I think it's for for Disney to kind of let her take the fall for it, and the kind of the reality, not reality, but like the idea that the reason why no one saw Snow White is not because it is like another remake of an anime movie that no one wanted, and that Gal Gadot is like one of the worst actresses working today in terms of like name recognition and actual acting production. And then there's just so many issues that you hear about with the actual film itself, and then you hear that Rachel Zegler is the only Rachel Zegler is this young kind of talent that is should be one of the on the up, in terms of like rising stars, and just kind of she's been hit with all this really unnecessary and like ridiculous outrage. It's just really sad to see. And so I just hope that she can, because there are people who want her career done.
Yeah,
People
which
that
is like
want her. It's like I
it's
hope
interesting
that
because
she can get find her feet with some really talented people, because I think she
yeah,
has the talent, and I just she's had to endure a lot of really awful stuff in the past few years,
yeah.
and she didn't deserve any of that.
No, of course not. I think like a kind of thing that stood out to me was when I was reading more about it was that obviously like super brave in the face of all this, but like a part of the article is that Mark Platt, the producer of the movie, like
Oh,
flew out
ridiculous.
in person
Yeah.
to to like tell her to take her pro-Palestinian posts down. Um Notable that she told him no. This is like a how old is she? Like 24-year-old woman or something like that. Like she's very young. Um and she like 23. Okay, not even 24. She's a 23-year-old woman. And she was like fucking no. And when I did more research, obviously a lot of people are going to talk about the fact that Mark Platt is Ben Platt's father. Um the
Yeah.
other thing that Mark Platt is Julie Platt's husband. And if you don't know who Julie Platt is, she is literally the chair of the board of trustees for the Jewish Federation of North America, who like donates and spends millions of dollars for Zionist like causes. Like one of the most powerful people in the country in terms of propping up Israel, and
Yeah.
that is that's like that's this guy's wife, and Rachel Zegler was like, "Fucking no, dude," like, which is just awesome. Like it's unbelievable
No, yeah,
how
she's
brave
great.
and like how much
She's
support she's gotten as a result. Obviously, it's like all really fucked up, and I'm wondering like I saw somebody mention this, and we're not like really in the business of like speculating about these things or like bringing up big conspiracy theories or anything, but like it is worth noting, kind of like you mentioned Disney and stuff, and it's like you do have to wonder that because we know that Hollywood blacklists people all the time. Like we know that that there
oh
are
yeah.
actors who like misstep and Hollywood, for whatever reason, and then more often than not, like kind of insidious bad reasons. And it's like with somebody like Rachel Zegler, who is the star of like this big blockbuster, like you said, and also like a very notable actress, it's a little bit harder for them to do that. And so I saw somebody say like I do wonder if somebody like Zaslav or whoever, like somebody big and powerful and important, was the one responsible for the Variety piece being posted,
Mhm.
like to make her look bad specifically. And it's like, given who wrote the piece, it's not hard to connect the dots and believe that that's a possibility. Again, and I'm not saying that like we're creating any big conspiracy theories, but it's like it is. I thought it was interesting to be like, yeah, it's very possible that like the reason why, because Variety seems more often than not to be posting these like really ridiculous. Like Variety's also been posting a ton about like box office. Like they recently posted that thing about the PTA movie being like, oh, it has to hit this amount of money
Yeah.
to not be a box office. And it's like, first of all, what are we doing over at Variety? You know what I mean? But
There
it's
was
like,
a new one about the the Bride film about how like it's $80 million and like should Maggie Gyllenhaal be making an 80 million? I was like,
Yeah. No, but
the amount of like
it's kind of this
disgusting
like
conversations that we are having about
yeah,
budgets
and it
is
makes you it doesn't when all of this stuff is being published in tandem, it's not, I don't think, a super far stretch to be like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody paying Variety or
yeah.
incentivizing Variety to make these kinds of, because even that stuff supports some of these big people, like it's like it is beneficial to guys like David Zaslav or whoever, uh to be like, hey, these movies, these artistic passion projects that we're giving tons of money to, not a good idea, and like to get the public on board with that by having Variety post pieces about it over and over again, like it is beneficial to them to do that. So it's like, again, I'm not suggesting anything, but it is like I think it's a thought that should be in your mind. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, we have some other news. The Sundance Film Festival has officially relocated to Boulder, Colorado, starting in 2027. This has been a subject that I think we've talked about on the podcast before, that their plans to move the festival. And now it's been moved to Boulder, Colorado, which is interesting location. It's like, it kind of, from my perspective, is just like big college town. Like, I don't know what significance Boulder has outside of the fact that it's like a place that a bunch of people want to like go to college and party. but but
Yeah,
now its significance will be Sundance, I guess.
it's interesting that I think the timing of it is interesting in terms of like next year's Sundance will still be in Utah. In terms of like,
It'll be like a goodbye.
I don't know. I think it's interesting to announce that the place is gonna be in already. Where I think like if they were like, okay, this is the last Sundance in Utah, and then we're gonna announce the next one. I just think it's like weird. Like it's gonna be weird knowing like people who go to Sundance next year. Like it's gonna be weird knowing that it's like we're going to Colorado next year. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be like more like, I guess because you can't kind of, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. But because it's like, oh, we're moving to Colorado. Actually, it's a year. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never been to Sundance.
Sure.
So
Have you been
I
to
don't have.
Colorado?
I've been to Colorado. I've been to
Ah,
Utah. I've been both places. I just haven't been to
same. Yeah.
Sundance.
Where did you visit? Did you visit Boulder, or you were in Denver? I'm
I
assuming.
don't. I
Or did you just
actually
like
was
drive
in
through Colorado?
what's the there's a festival in Colorado, right?
Uh,
There's a festival
yeah,
in
I think
that area,
so.
right? Because it's like the small.
Maybe.
There's a ski town.
Yes, I think I know what is it? It's not. Is it Telluride?
Telluride, yes. Was that's in Colorado?
Yes.
So that was Sundance and Telluride are both in Colorado.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I was in that little town. I was in Telluride, but I don't know exactly where I was.
It's kind of like, also, I mean, Telluride is not like the biggest festival. Yeah, it's Telluride's in Colorado. It's kind of cool, the idea that like year round Telluride is like a little town with 2,000 people,
No, yeah, it's super
and
cute.
then once a year they just have like they host just a giant like group of people incoming for, you know what I mean? Like, I
Hmm.
don't know. That's very cool to like just have a place like
Yeah,
that where it's like
I
small community that turns big for a week.
yeah, it's just interesting. It'll also be interesting, especially like if say I am not at the next year Sundance Film Festival, and then like in the future I go to the Colorado one. It'll
And
be
it's like you
interesting to
never
it'll be
experienced
interesting
it.
to never have gone to Utah. Like it'd be like the only
Yeah,
Sundance I know is the Colorado Sundance, and it'll
yeah,
be like I feel like I'll be missing something.
right.
It'll
You
be a
didn't,
weird.
but when you went to Telluride, you just went to like visit. You didn't go to like the
No, I
festival,
wasn't at the
right?
festival. I was just there.
Okay.
I was on my cross country trip, and that was just a place we visited.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
So
a
I
cool place to
wasn't.
visit. I only drove through Colorado on my cross country trip. I mean, I spent the night in like a town with like 12 people in it. but that
Colorado's
was it.
cool. I like
Colorado's
Colorado.
awesome. No, I mean I also spent a week in Denver for my friend's wedding, and it was like I love that
Yeah,
place.
no.
Colorado's awesome. I would live in Colorado. Maybe not Boulder, but I would live in Denver at least.
Yeah, no,
Huh.
I like that. The West is cool.
Yeah. Shout out the West. Um,
But yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many thoughts on it just because I've never been to. I
yeah.
know there's a culture around the kind of Utah Sundance kind of
Yeah.
thing where like you
There's a great Entourage episode about it.
um
I wanna
so
go to
that's kind
Sundance.
of lost forever. I don't know the exact rates. I know like Cincinnati was a name involved. I also think like Salt Lake City was just an option at one point where they were going to keep it in Utah, just not in that area. Um, but I'm not entirely up to date with all the reasons for it.
Yeah. No, well, it's like I think it's
I think one
notable
of the
that they
big
pick.
things is like they want to expand and they want to make it a
Yeah.
bigger thing, and there was only so much they could do in that spot, so they're hoping that you move it to Boulder and it can become kind of a bigger event because Sundance, as it was kind of smaller thing.
Yeah. I guess that's true. But I also think it's like notable that they like pick a location where it's like, Denver was right there, you know what I mean? Like it's like I think it's notable that they picked
Yeah,
Boulder rather than Denver, like rather than picking like the giant city in that area, they're like we're picking a more reasonably. I mean, Boulder's still a big place, but like it's not anywhere near the size of Denver, so I think
it'd be
that's
fun
like
if it was like the All-Star game. It like changed every year.
they just move it around. They're like,
Yeah.
where's Sundance gonna be this year? And then the one year they have it in Jersey City. And,
Yeah.
like,
The
it's
Jersey
like you
City
guys looks like you
Sundance.
guys are coming to fucking New Jersey now.
Yeah, and like, well, we get like the way like they kind of do it, where there's like a 5-year plan or something, where it's like we got like these are like the next 5 Sundances or whatever.
Yeah.
I
No,
think it'd
that'd
be
be
fun, but
yeah, traveling cheap would
I
be
don't hate Colorado. I think there's definitely worse options it could have been.
I mean, yeah, Ohio would be where not to shit on our Ohio listeners, but man, you guys are brave living there. And also like it's like to succeed in life after being raised in Ohio, I'll never achieve anything like that. So
That's why LeBron's so great.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Our next piece of news. That now let's go to actual movie news or like in relation to real movies, not just like more vague stuff.
This is
But
all movie news
no, it's all movie news. But I mean, like this is about a specific movie, is what I mean. Sundance is
about many
festival.
movies.
Yeah, Barry Jenkins is set to direct "Be My Baby," a Ronnie Spector biopic starring Zendaya. It will delve into the singer's life with troubled producer Phil Spector, who was sentenced to 19 years in prison in 2009 for the murder of actress Lana Clarkson. Before her passing, notable, Ronnie Spector hand-selected Zendaya to play her. Um, I mean, obviously, this is exciting. It's Barry Jenkins'
Yeah, number two.
Zendaya movie.
I
Yeah,
hope both of these movies are real and exist and come out.
yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
the best thing for Barry would be to be making as many movies as possible with awesome actors and great crews, and just kind of have a great career, because that was the big thing. We talked about it a bunch, but just Barry Jenkins having that weird post Oscars like years. And I think we're now like he's done with Mufasa. He's done with that like era of like it was like 4 years of his life working on Mufasa, and now he's kind of able to do what he wants to do, and that is very exciting. And I hope that all of this happens because I
Yeah,
think they both are like, oh wow, Barry Jenkins doing a movie with two of the biggest stars on the
yeah.
planet, and like it's like, hey, yeah, count me
No,
in,
yeah,
man.
it's all super exciting. I really do. Yeah, same thing that you said. I really hope that we get to see both of these because like Barry Jenkins making real movies is better for everybody.
Yeah,
Obviously. Yeah, that's really exciting. I don't know if you I don't know if you have opinions about the next piece of news, which is that I mean, I just had to include it because it's a big deal, but it means essentially nothing to us, I imagine. The full cast of Avengers Doomsday was released via chairs in an over 5 hour long live stream. Although apparently the rumor is that there's still more cast to be
hmm
announced. I don't, not that that matters to me. I don't even have the list of the cast here because it's so obnoxiously long. I could pull it up. I know some people were talking about like I don't know. I mean, Channing Tatum's in it. That's cool. You know, they're bringing back his character from one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but at least it's Channing Tatum.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was funny because like none of it was really, and maybe like that's how far we are in to this like fucking shit. But it was
yeah,
like
none of this was like surprising.
none of it was shocking to the point of like there's no, and that's why it's like they're we got more people were gonna announce, but it was just like a bunch of X-Men guys, and then
Yeah, I
I
think
I hopped in the like the last two. I was like watching on my live stream, and the last two was like it was like Pedro Pascal, and then Robert Downey Jr. came out, and he was like the last guy, and I was like, oh okay,
yeah.
like I already knew those guys were both gonna be in the
Yeah,
movie.
none of it's like really exciting. I will say the one thing, and maybe I'm just misinterpreting this and they have other ideas. Like maybe they're smarter than I think, but I also think it's possible that they're dumber than I think than that or like as dumb as I suggest that they are, which is that like they just revealed which characters from their upcoming
Thunderbolts.
movie Thunderbolts are in the Doomsday cast. And obviously, like, I don't know, any number of things could happen that like stops people from being in a movie or whatever, I guess. You know what I mean? But like, you know, like there could be some other thing going on in like the Marvel world. I don't know how this all works, but like, but what it reads like is that they're just spoiling Thunderbolts and telling you which characters survive in the movie Thunderbolts. Again, it's probably a little bit more well thought out than that. I think at this point they take the time to think these things out because they're spending so much fucking money on it. But it would be really funny if they were just like, "Oh yeah, that stuff doesn't matter." Like they're just not even thinking about it, and they're just like, "Yeah, no, this
Yeah.
is just who makes it into the next movie," and like they're just spoiling a movie that hasn't come out yet for their bigger movie.
Well, I think
Um,
it's funny, especially if they're not like their plan was like to not reveal all the actors in the movie. Like
yeah,
Tom Holland wasn't a part of that list. I've seen some Sammy J reacts TikToks where he's saying that he hopes Tom Holland is not in the movie because he thinks it'll be better. Because there was a apparently, and this is I'm just getting deep into the Marvel bag here. Apparently, the next Spider-Man movie takes place at the same time as Doomsday. So they're happening at the same time. So
yeah,
we'll see if Tom
and
Holland
that's
is in the
significant
next.
because he'll be busy doing something else.
He'll be in, yeah. But I
But does
think
that
if
mean also that all the Spider-Man characters aren't going to be in it because they're all going to be busy doing something else?
what other Spider-Man characters?
I don't know, like
Zendaya.
Zendaya and stuff. Yeah.
What? Why would Zendaya shows up in the Avengers movie without Spider-Man? It's just like Zendaya.
Or like
Um,
is it Jacob? Uh,
he's not gonna be in the Avengers movie by himself.
well, dude, why wouldn't he be? He could so that they do the dumbest shit in the world. You tell me he can't show up to like tell a joke like for something funny.
Okay,
Tell me he
maybe.
can't just like be in a scene.
All right, but well, I guess what I was saying was like I think if they're planning on releasing more names than keeping more things hidden, which they have to be, like I very much like expect to see like at least Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield or something like that
Or
in
like
one
one of
of
the
these
other
movies.
Spider-Mans. Yeah.
But
It's so lame.
and also
Like,
like Hugh Jackman's probably gonna be in the movie,
yeah, sure.
and like
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds probably. I don't know.
Yeah. The
So
stuff that
I'm
like
saying
really
like
makes people go
there's gonna
nuts.
be more actors in the movie. So why did they use the chairs on some people that like
Do
we don't know if they're dead or not, you know, sort of thing.
Do you think it's at all possible that these two Avengers movies that they have planned are going to have the same cultural weight as Infinity War and Endgame? Or do you
No,
think that there's
no,
no way that you could get people to care as much as they did back when those movies came out?
I don't think it'll ever be as like and as an event, but I mean people still care. I mean it had like 10 million views on watching those chairs. Like
Sure, yeah.
I
No, I
think
mean,
people
undoubtedly the movie's gonna make like $2 billion, but
it's
I
going
just feel
to
like there's no way it'll feel like Endgame. Like,
no, I don't think it'll have that like cultural impact, but I also think like they're at this point where like even during Endgame, there was talks of like, you know, how do you like outdo this? How do you keep going higher? And they're kind of at this point where they're like nostalgia baiting for movies that people didn't even like, or like it's
sure.
like, or it's like you know, basically like the whole that whole chair thing. Like a lot of the basis of that was like remember these X-Men from the early 2000s, and it was like
Yeah.
there's only so much of that you can do until you run out of characters. Like even like the Channing Tatum thing is like a reference to a movie that never got made. So like
Yeah.
there's only so much they can do of this, and the well is gonna empty out pretty soon. And I don't think that the hype is there as it
Yeah. It's
was.
also worth noting that like people's relationship to the actual like product, like to the Marvel movies has changed, where it's like everything leading up to Infinity War and Endgame was like super well liked. And now a lot of
Yeah.
movies in like the post Endgame phase, even like Marvel fans are like, oh, this isn't as good as like the old Iron Man movies or Captain America or whatever. So I feel like it's harder to care as much about the big Avengers movie when you don't care as much about the movies that lead up to it as people did in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so I think it's
Yeah, I don't
also
know. We
good
don't.
because
The fact we're even talking about this for more than like a minute is funny.
it's actually kind of funny the way that they operate in a way of like something like the Eternals, right? It's like, oh, people don't like that. We're just gonna like stop talk like those characters don't exist anymore. It's like the funny way that they like kind of operate where it's like
Yeah,
they're so like they're like kind of bitches in the way that like they don't like stick to like they don't like there's obviously like a plan they have, and then they like if people don't like certain characters they introduce, they just like remove them from the plan.
yeah,
And it's like what? I don't know.
yeah.
It's lame. Also, Sam
Um,
Raimi wanted to direct this movie. I think
really?
that's of note that Sam Raimi was like, "Yeah, I'll direct the next Avengers movie," and then they did not give him the job.
Damn. Who's directing it again?
It's the
Is
Russo
it?
brothers.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that. Right. That makes sense.
What I think the Sam
Um,
Raimi thing is ultimately because like people were like
because of
divisive
the
on
Russo
Multiverse of
brothers.
Madness. No, it's because Sam
Oh,
Raimi people were
I
divisive on that
thought.
movie, and then they
Yeah.
were like, and then it was kind of like the Russo brothers is kind of like an all time panic move of like we need to bring back the Russo brothers and Tony Stark because people like those guys
Right.
rather
Yeah.
than like believing in like what you have.
Right. Um, the next piece of news. Speaking of big movies, Amy Pascal and David Heyman are officially set to produce the next James Bond film for Amazon. This is for listeners who are unaware, very significant news because they got like the two biggest producers in the world, or two of the biggest producers in the, they were just like, okay, we're gonna move on to new producers, and the producers are going to be the guy who produced the Harry Potter movies and Barbie, and the woman who produced like a bunch of
Everything.
like all of the modern Spider-Man movies and a bunch of other stuff. Obviously, like a ton of controversy around her too. There's a character kind of based on her and in the studio, which Doug and I talked about. But you know, like she's a kind of she's probably better known by name, I guess, Amy Pascal. But David Heyman is like a juggernaut when it comes to produce. I mean, being the guy who did Harry Potter is just like I don't think that there's a better thing that you could in the modern day that you can have attached to you as a producer. Like it's like they really got like two giants for this. So I don't know. Um, yeah, of significance, I guess. Also, the rumor here that I think is interesting is that David Heyman has a relationship with director of the third Harry Potter movie, Alfonso Cuarón,
Oh yeah, I did see
and
this.
so I was listening to a podcast that mentioned that maybe the reason why they brought David Heyman along with Amy Pascal was to get Cuarón on board to be the director for the next James Bond movie, which like cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch an Alfonso Cuarón directed James Bond movie. You know what I mean? Like I'm down.
Yeah, there was some reports of that, or that being like a thing, and I
Yeah,
think it's better than David Leitch.
but like by so much. Yeah. I mean, I know you're not like, I guess,
I just
as
haven't
crazy
been. I
about
have
you
not.
haven't really watched his movies. Yeah. And there's
But
some
I think
I
for
mean I haven't
Bond, I mean for Bond, I mean that's
yeah.
it seems like one of the
Um
best options.
yeah,
Um,
without a doubt. I think it's cool, especially if it's going to like start an era of new James Bond movies. I think he's, as a director, obviously
Would he?
capable
How
of
many would he
getting.
do? Just
I don't
one?
know, but even if he just does this, I mean, he only did one Harry Potter movie, you know what I mean? But it's like
He wanted to
even
do more,
no, I know, but like,
but
but
they were
even
like,
the Harry Potter
we gotta do
movie,
this fast. We gotta go fast."
even the Harry Potter movie that he did established like a tone and a direction for the rest of the movies in the franchise. Like
Sure.
it was the transition movie from the two early movies to be like, okay, this is like now they're growing up, like this is darker and like this is where
Yeah.
the movies are going to go. And so I think he's obviously capable of making a big block, but even if this is the only James Bond movie that he directs, he's capable of making a big James Bond movie that establishes the direction for whatever this era of James Bond is going to be, and like a language that people can understand. Like they're like, oh, this is what we're going to be getting out of this
You should make it,
era
like,
of
dark
James
and
Bond.
creepy, like the fucking Harry Potter movie. Just,
Yeah,
like,
that'd be
fucking
sick.
little creepy Bond.
I don't know if like that's like really his thing as much as it is just like what he did with that Harry Potter
I
movie. I
know,
mean,
but it'd be
like,
funny. I'm just
but
imagining Bond.
yeah. No, but I think
Creepy
but you know what I
Bond.
mean? Like I think he is a guy who is capable of like
Yeah, he's
getting
a guy.
across the ideas that they want to like structure whatever however many James Bond movies they're gonna
Yeah,
make with the next
and
actor
Tom
like
Holland will
around.
do really good at
Okay. Tom
Tom
Holland?
Holland. Yeah,
Was
Amy's
that a
got a relationship
cat?
with Tom. That was Tom Holland.
Okay.
That was just Tom.
The last piece
And
of news we have here, 20th Century has acquired Martin Scorsese's next film starring Leonardo DiCaprio, The Rock, and Emily Blunt about a mob boss vying for control of the Hawaiian Islands in the 1960s and 70s. We talked about this movie in the news previously, but the reason why I put this back in the news, I guess, is because, and I think maybe Doug was the one who mentioned this when we talked about it last time, was that like we've talked about a lot of news surrounding upcoming Scorsese projects, and we don't know which one is actually going to get made. But the way that we talked about this one was like, oh, they got The Rock on board to get the movie made,
mhm.
and now that 20th Century has acquired it, it seems like unlike all the other speculative Scorsese projects, this is the one that will be getting made. And so that's kind of why I included it back in the news here, is
Yeah,
because it's like, oh, they're actually pursuing that. Like this is the one.
I
So
believed it. I believed this was gonna happen just because of The Rock.
yeah,
It came clear to me, like, The Rock doesn't sign on to a movie, it doesn't happen, right?
sure,
I
yeah,
feel like he's got so much pull. It's like kind of like a Kevin Hart situation, right? Where like they will throw but
that's a
but like,
crazy.
no, but like with The Rock and
No,
Kevin
you're
Hart and
right.
those guys,
Yeah,
it's like there are companies like Netflix and whatever that will throw them $300 million and nothing else has to be attached. It just has to be that one guy, right?
yeah,
So with Dwayne being there, and I know Netflix was really like they wanted this film. Netflix wanted this film bad because they loved their boy Dwayne, you know. So I think it was pretty obvious that this movie is gonna happen because for whatever reason, I can't really explain it to you, but Leonardo and Marty crickets, right?
yeah. Which is
Leonardo,
crazy. I mean,
Marty,
like we were just
Leonardo, Marty, and Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
I was just
Everybody is like,
talking
take our money.
um about the One Battle After Another trailer, and
Yeah.
like and how good Leo is in like just the trailer. And I'm like,
Mhm.
and I've never been like outspoken as like this guy's my favorite actor or whatever. Like Leo's never been like my guy to say, but like he is so much like the movie star of our general. Like he is so unbelievable, and like it's it should be, and it should have always been that like he is the guy, like it. The fact that The Rock would have to be attached to get a movie made is every movie that Leonardo DiCaprio is in should just make a ton of money. Like that should have just always been the case. It's not.
Yeah.
But like, man, he's so good. Like it's so crazy. And it's like obviously this is not some unique take. Obviously this is how everybody feels, but it's just like it's worth noting because like yeah, like I said, like he's not my favorite actor or anything, but like it's like he's too good of a movie star to like not be treated like a movie star, you know? And I mean, even this is the case for a lot of people. There are huge names who like still have flops at this point. Like, there's very few actors who just every movie is a guaranteed success. Um, but that should
Yeah.
be the case for like, I mean, he should be the one selling the movie and not The Rock. Um, but sadly, that's just not how things are going. So it's fine. I mean, you know, like I said, still excited to see The Rock in a Scorsese movie. I think it could be cool. I think it's obviously cool
Yeah.
that this is news coming out after he is in another like movie where he's committing to the role and like trying to be taken seriously as an actor. I'm like, yeah, dude, you know, knock yourself like this is not what I want for Scorsese in the sense that I don't want him to have to do these things and compromise himself to just to get a movie made at this point in his career. But you know, The Rock's not like the worst casting in the world. It's not Gal Gadot. It's like
This is
it's
true.
fine. It's fine. I think he could act, and I'm curious. Even if it's not
Yeah,
the most
no.
exciting speculative project, I think, you know, at least we're getting it. It's, you know, at least it's a Scorsese movie that's going to get made. So we can appreciate that. That's our last piece of news. Next week, I guess it's not technically confirmed among us yet, but it looks like we'll be talking
Among
about.
Us.
Okay. It looks like we'll be talking about a Minecraft movie. That is, if I can even still get tickets to go see it. I wonder if it's sold
Yeah.
out at this point. Do
It's
you think it's
already made $1 billion in previews, so
yeah, well, okay, so, like, during the recording of this podcast, several people I follow started posting reviews because I guess the screenings are starting for a Minecraft movie. The
Yes.
first, like, early
And they're
screenings are
saying,
happening.
"Underrated
Um
masterpiece,
It's
5
funny because, like, a
stars."
bunch of just, like, big Minecraft heads gave it 5 stars just, like, without
Mm,
seeing the movie, and so right now it's, like, scale just has,
Minecraft
like
heads.
it's just, like, overwhelmingly five-star reviews. I Some of them are probably just people joking, but, like, yeah, that movie, I feel like we just kinda you know, we can't avoid it, like, we kinda have to talk about it on the podcast because this is just gonna
Yeah, it's
be, like
important. It's a cultural
it's gonna be
moment.
such a massive movie. I mean, I can't imagine this movie making less than $1 billion.
Massive.
There's no right? There's no world in I don't know. We don't really do like the whole predictions thing around here, but like surely there's no reality where a Minecraft movie
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
less than a
Jason
billion
Momoa is in
dollars.
it, so,
Okay.
like,
I mean, it's
it's
not
gonna
even
make
that.
$1 billion,
It's just
right?
like
Oh,
I
yeah, he's
mean, it's Jack Black, dude. It's like he's the vehicle for children. Like he is
it's
the guy who like
Valkyrie,
is she in it?
apparently.
Okay. Is Mr. Beast in this movie? Do we know?
No, he's not allowed
In
near any
movies?
kids, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that's true, but, um,
It
yeah, we'll
should
see.
be.
We'll see. There'll either be plenty to talk about or absolutely nothing to talk about, but that is tentatively the subject of
Maybe
next
we could
week's
play Minecraft while
episode.
we review Minecraft.
Yeah, if my computer's ready in time, then yeah, we could maybe do that.
We'll just, like,
Um,
barely be
maybe
paying
instead of talking about the movie, if the movie's really bad, maybe instead of talking about it, we'll just do a pod where it shows like all three of our cameras at the top and then just all three of our screens as we play a Minecraft world
It's a
together.
Minecraft podcast.
For just like 2 hours of us just like playing Minecraft on and that would be very bad for audio listeners, I think. But
Yeah, but
uh,
they can
hey,
take a week
okay.
off, alright?
I was gonna say let's be careful with your words,
They
you
can
know?
sleep, Owen. They can sleep in, man.
Yeah. Anyway,
They can
that's
hit the sack, man. Oh, woo-hoo.
okay. All right. That's episode 112 next week,
Open your eyes.
and we'll see you later.